Well, guys, we are back to another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show, episode 30, after a week delay. So, we actually got 6 topics for this one, but a lot of videos on a whole bunch of them, so we're going to get into them. But first, what are today's topics?
Candice Owens being an idiot, Liberty University okay with sexual assaults, 2021 elections, vaccine hesitancy, idiot libs losing culture war crap, progressives caving and looking stupid, hashtag primary Rokana and Pramila J. Powell.
Alright, so what do you want to talk about first?
I guess we can start with Candice Owens being an idiot.
Oh, yeah!
And to Nazi Germany.
Now, of course, this one applies to you more. I knew as soon as I saw this video, you just had to talk about it for a laugh. So, of course, do you want to talk about it, or do you want to get to Kyle's video first?
So this was where Candice Owens was comparing the lockdowns in Australia with Nazi Germany.
Well, as an Australian as yourself, what do you have to say about that? Do you think they're valid?
Nope.
You're saying she's an idiot?
I'm saying that she loves invoking Hitler a lot.
You're a racist for saying that, remember? Alright, so, anything you want to say before getting to Kyle's video about how stupid she is?
Go through these points by points.
So, watch Kyle's video.
Yep.
So Candice Owens has a new show. I forget which outlet it's on. One of the daily outlets, Daily Wire, Daily Caller, one of those. One of the horrible right-wing rags. She is a pompous blowhard who doesn't know anything but talks with an extreme amount of confidence, so dupes people into believing her, or just makes it so that right-wingers can have confirmation bias and...
And careful, Kyle, they'll call you racist
like
for saying that.
Getting a level of certitude for their prior held beliefs that is unmerited. So she goes out on her show and makes an argument here about Australia that is absurd. So I will say that the media is misleading people on this. There are a bunch of headlines about how Candice Owens calls to invade Australia. That's actually not true. I watched the whole segment, and she clearly says, she literally says, I'm saying that in jest. Like, of course I don't want to invade Australia. But she's making the point that we talked about freedom and democracy.
They should.
What?
She probably secretly thinks that you guys should.
Of course she does. What do you expect?
And going into Afghanistan, well, what about the freedom and democracy to go into Australia? Because in her opinion, they're massively restricting freedom and democracy. So she doesn't actually want to invade Australia. But what's amazing is people are burying the lead because there was a equally ridiculous, if not more ridiculous statement she actually made in the same segment. Take a look.
For the last 20 years, the United States has spent trillions of dollars overseas in Afghanistan fighting a war, which we lost, by the way. We were told that the war was necessary anyway. It was necessary, the slaughtering of American sons and daughters on foreign soil, because we were fighting a noble cause, to spread democracy in a tyrannical land, to free an oppressed people.
And to get that opium and
so
lithium.
I'm going to ask those same lecturing politicians and media members a question now. When do we deploy troops to Australia? When do we invade Australia and free an oppressed people who are suffering under a totalitarian regime? When do we spend trillions of dollars?
Communist dictator Dan Andrews. Funny that she probably doesn't think that for Gladys Berejiklian before she left, because it was revealed that she had made corrupt deals
to spread democracy in Australia. Australia currently, make no mistake, is a tyrannical police state. Its citizens are quite literally being imprisoned against their will. So when do we deploy?
All right, so
didn't she say was that she said that the military deliberately imprisoning people?
Yep. So are you under a police state right now?
No. In fact, I'm not even kidding you. That's not even what the military is doing. All the military are doing is that they're just talking to people as part of contact tracing.
So you're saying she's a liar and an idiot?
Yes.
You're very racist for pointing that out, though, remember?
Well, the female equivalent of an Uncle Tom. So I'm afraid she's. And anyway, it's hypocritical of her to say because if I remember correctly, before she became a right-wing grifter, she actually teamed up with the group that she now opposes and claims is evil, NAACP, I think it was, to secure $40,000 for a racial discrimination case.
But see, that was okay.
Because she was grifting as a leftist.
But see, that's okay if she does it, but it's not okay for us to do it or some crap, remember?
Yep.
Of course.
Yep.
I asked that.
Good old NPC talking point there.
Real answer. What's happening in Australia under the guise of a virus, which, by the way, as of August 7, 2021, experts estimate the overall recovery rate is between 97% and 99.75%.
So?
What's actually happening under the guise of this virus is federal overreach, tyranny, totalitarianism, the kind that gives birth to evil dictatorships and human atrocities.
Oh! So you happy you have an evil dictatorship down there now?
No, we don't.
Are you?
We don't. Never have, and unless Chris Kenny and Clive Palmer get their way, we never will.
So you're saying she's lying and wrong again?
It's a day with a Y in it. So that's kind
How
of the
could you?
Candice Owens.
You're a white man. You can't say that to a minority woman. You should know better.
I will call out anybody of any race when they are fucking wrong.
Ooh, the right would be so bad about that, though.
Thank
We're
you.
watching a replay of the early ambitions of Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez. That is what is hiding beneath the guise of this fictitious, perpetual need to slow the spread. We all know some more truths. That what's happening in Australia was meant to happen here in America. That this current totalitarian administration is fighting tooth and nail to trample state rights and federalize America. And if it were not for Republican governors standing in the way, we would be
And
similarly
keeping
stripped
COVID
right
spreading,
now
of course.
our most basic of
Considering
individual
we've had
freedoms.
that in the second wave, Australia had 800 deaths and about 20,000 cases. Yeah. Kind of what happens when you don't slow the spread. Oh, by the way, second wave, Victoria. I think this was the Alpha variant, which is a little bit more, bit more infectious than the original strain, but nowhere near as infectious as Delta. They actually did lock down, and in 4 months went from over 700 cases to 0.
But those are inconvenient facts, remember?
Yep. There's some inconvenient
See, those
facts.
last 2 points are the points that everybody's overlooking, but that's actually the absurd part. So she was clearly not advocating we invade Australia. But what she is saying is, what's going on in Australia, their response to COVID, makes them like, and I quote, Hitler, Stalin, Fidel Castro, and Hugo Chavez. Now, just put aside the absurdity
that is
that
socialists of immigration and subjugation.
she's so uneducated on this topic, and she's such a propagandist that she doesn't understand that there is a grand canyon of a difference between all of those figures.
But
Stalin,
conservatives
Hitler,
are stupid.
Fidel
You
Castro,
know that,
and Hugo-
Kyle.
You're putting Fidel Castro
They're
and Hugo
also
Chavez.
partisans and think that
Whatever
everything they don't like is socialist.
Think of them. You're putting them in the same category as Stalin and Hitler? Why not tattoo on your forehead, I'm a fucking ignorant dumbass? You should do that, because clearly you know nothing about probably any of them. Then she goes on to say, and the reality is, this is what this administration wants to do here. Okay, so let me give you just some basic facts about what's going on in Australia. Now, Australia has been, it's true, they've been...
Also, maybe you should give your perspective on it since you're down there and you probably have better info than Kyle, maybe, too.
very aggressive with...
And I think this was a few months ago, too, this video, so it's probably not up to date when Kyle talks about either.
cracking down on COVID. So they do have a much more top-down response than the United States. they do have a much more, I think it's fair to call it authoritarian response compared to the United States. For one thing, they have these snap lockdowns whenever there's any cases. And now, listen, as I have my own biases coming into this conversation, as an American, I can only shake my my commitment to individualism so much. I am a Yankee tried and true at heart, so when I look back on how we handled COVID from the beginning, we mismanaged it in 1,000 different ways, but lockdowns are not my cup of tea. I think that we should have basically copied the Japanese approach, which is like universal masking.
At least with the earlier variants, a little bit less effective with Delta, but if you smack down like day one, you'll be all right. We did that in Northern Territory, South Australia, Western Australia. New Zealand were about 24 hours too late, so they nearly got theirs out, but they've found that they haven't been able to. So I know that Auckland's still under pretty serious, significant restrictions, but they're not on full lockdowns.
And also, I'll go on.
But Victoria and New South Wales didn't lock down for over a month, and then did a half-hearted lockdown for another 3 weeks. And Victoria lifted their lockdown too soon.
And of course...
And that's why they failed.
And there's another two things too. One, at least you guys did UBI, which we didn't do. That would have massively helped with the lockdown.
Yep,
and
we did that for the first... Yeah, we did basically UBI. We doubled our Social Security. And we actually gave... fortnightly payments to those who lost income thanks to the lockdowns. That was more state level, because after a certain point the federal government decided, we don't care about our workers anymore, we hate them, we're going to go back to hating all workers again.
Yeah, at least you guys did something we did, like nothing over here. And another thing too, Kyle brought up Japan, but I think he brought up Sweden before, which, God, do you remember Sweden was always like the talking point about the right, they didn't do lockdowns and nothing happened to them. There is one fundamental difference, though, between them and Japan, too, compared to them. They actually did everything else. Like, they socially distanced, they wore masks, and they massively took the vaccines if available and all that crap. You guys aren't doing any of them. You're not even trying to help combat the spread of COVID. You're just going like just a normal day like any other day. They at least try to do something. That's why their cases were much lower, even if they didn't lock down. So, if you don't want the lockdown, you have to also play your part in it, which you guys just aren't doing.
And I think, the vaccine obviously should have been pushed aggressively, and I like the idea of you could either get the vaccine or get tested all the time. I love that idea. I think that that's the best way to approach this.
That's
now, it is true.
Australia's going to be doing now with some of our things.
Well, he goes further than that. They had these snap lockdowns, but having said that, I wouldn't want to be in Australia over the United States, but you also can't deny the effects of what they've done. So the downside is, yes, there are some more restrictions on freedom, but the upside is, I believe their total number of dead in the entire pandemic is about 1,500 people.
Well, you're more recent, so what's the current number now?
Inching, to be clear, we're inching towards 2,000. And that's with our lockdown states actually opening up because they're at 80%.
Yeah, like 2,000 people across a country of like 20-something million people compared to over 700,000 in a country of like 330 million people. Even if you put the population size in account, we're still blowing out Australia and everyone else for crying out loud. Like, we're one of the worst.
Okay, by the way, before June, we had less than 1,000 deaths.
Because you guys...
Most of those come during the second wave.
Because unlike America, you guys actually tried something.
In fact, let me fact check this.
And not as stupid as good old America. We're number one stupidity, remember?
We're on air. As I'm talking to you, I'll give you the exact number. So we have a grand total of 1,448 deaths in all of Australia.
Well, now it's 2,000, as he just said.
Now compare that to the United States.
Nearly 2K. We're not quite there yet.
United States
deaths
we're
under
from
1,900 at the moment. Let's give you an idea. I'm scaling up Australia to death count to the population of America. 25,148.
Yeah.
We scaled up to America.
So if we compared Australia's population to ours, if we had their death, we would only have like 20,000 people dead, not 700-something thousand.
Australia would have 25,000 deaths if we checked Australia's population to America.
That's almost as
The
much.
US would have 60,000 if we brought it down to Australia's level.
Yep.
That's more than double.
36
That's 2.5 times.
1,000. Now, even if you know, because obviously just looking at the raw numbers is not sufficient. You'd have to do it per capita to see the reality. But even if you look at it per capita, we are a gigantic mess. I mean, nearly 1 million people have died, and they're faring relatively well in terms of the number of deaths from COVID. So, now she doesn't give you any of those facts. She doesn't give you any of that information because what she wants to do is paint a biased picture and push her narrative. She doesn't want to say, well, look, here are the downsides. But, I mean, I can't bury the lead here. The upside would be people aren't dying in nearly as high numbers. But she doesn't tell you that important piece of context because she's a propagandist. Now, again, I have my own bias coming into this conversation. I do have a bias towards individualism to some extent. I do have a bias towards freedom to some extent, which is why, looking back on it, I don't like the idea of the lockdowns. I would have just done universal masking policy instead. But she would have called universal masking authoritarian as well. She would have called any basic regulations to try to stop a global pandemic, she would have called it authoritarian, and she would have done exactly what she did, which is say, this administration, meaning Biden, is like Stalin, Hitler, Fidel Castro, and Hugo Chavez. So,
Yep.
Australia is like Hitler,
She's a
and Biden is
pro-disease maggot.
like Hitler. And by the way, to pretend like there's no difference between what Australia's doing and what the US is doing is just a lie. There's no way around that. It's not like, oops, you just forgot the nuance of it. No, because what's Biden's approach? Well, I don't know. Why don't we look at what he did for his approach? Have there been lockdowns? No. Biden didn't lock down the economy. In fact, Biden has taken the opposite position, and he said it strongly, that we're not going to lock down again. Okay, so why are you lying? As if Biden is the same as Australia when Australia likes to go into these snap lockdowns whenever there's cases. Candice, that's just a lie, and you know that's a lie. So the way they've approached it is not even close to the same. And there's some people who would argue, well, they like the Australian way better. Now, again, me personally, I don't. I like the Biden way better. The other part of Biden's policy is what? She would say, an authoritarian vaccine mandate that Joe Biden is doing. It's not an authoritarian mandate if you have an option of either get the vaccine or get tested. And that's what Biden did, and he only did it for businesses with 100 employees or more. So just
And I think I just saw on Twitter recently that some court or ever just struck that down recently, too.
an outright war on nuance and complexity and detail, and she's being hyperbolic because she's a hack. And again, to make the case, Hitler, Australia's like Hitler, Biden is like Hitler. I mean, do we even need to get into the details? You guys all know this. You guys, you know, the overwhelming majority of you who watch the show are educated on topics like this. You care about history, you care about politics. Millions and millions, what is it, 6 million people that died as a result of Hitler.
More like up to like 20 to 40 million if you include everything.
Yeah. That's just Jewish deaths. Because remember, there was another genocide with
In the Holocaust, too.
and another mini Holocaust with the Polish people alone.
Yep.
They lost nearly as many again.
So, basically, Candice Owens is as stupid as the Pelipper I just battled that just used Roost at full health.
Concentration camps, gas chambers, starving
As
people to death.
stupid as Priest Seno in New Year Dark Dawn Stories when he used Raigeki on the first turn while going first.
Literally trying to take over the world and actually succeeding to a large degree in taking over vast swaths of Europe, almost all of Europe. And you're going to compare lockdowns from a virus to active genocide. And you're going to compare Joe Biden, whose approach has been no lockdowns, vaccinate or test. That's like Adolf Hitler. He wants to do that, but if the big, brave Republican governors are stopping him, nobody should take her seriously. Nobody. And my message to the media is this. You don't need to lie or mislead people when she says the ridiculous thing 2 seconds after the thing you made the headline. So the original article in The Guardian said something to the effect of, you know, Candice Owens wants to invade Australia, or Candice Owens asked when we're going to invade Australia to bring them like freedom and democracy. But clearly you saw the clip. Now, I'm second to none in my hatred of Candice Owens, but clearly she said, I'm asking this in jest. So I don't know why you make that the headline when the ridiculous thing she said is right after that. Oh, Australia and this administration are like Stalin, Hitler, Fidel Castro, Hugo Chavez.
Speaking of which, remember when she was at a congressional hearing, she said the only problem that Hitler did was that he went too far in his nationalism.
That was on the Joe Rogan podcast.
So, guys, she said on a congressional...
And then she doubled down and played the race card when it was played back to her.
What do you expect? black conservatives, they always do it poll when they have nothing left. They always do that, and then they accuse us libs of doing it.
Absolutely absurd. And the other thing is, that it's just rank partisanship with her too. So, you want to talk about authoritarian crackdowns? What do you think Guantanamo Bay is?
But they agree with that, though.
Snowden revealed, what happened under the Bush administration and under the Obama administration, where we
But they
have NSA
agree with
spying
that.
and collection of metadata on all Americans. You have no protection for
But they
unreasonable
love spying
search and
on
seizure anymore.
people.
That's pretty authoritarian. The drug war in this country, which locks up people for non-violent so-called crimes, we jail more people than any other nation on earth.
And to trigger even more, aversive systemic racism.
And that's authoritarian. But it's like there's never a substantive criticism, and it never applies to the right. It's always just through a partisan lens, and always against the left, and always hyperbolic. I got a zillion problems with Biden. His COVID strategy being like Hitler is not one of them, because I have a functioning brain, and I don't have a cinder block where my head is. So, Jesus Christ, man. By the way, she also just does, I don't know if you caught it there, but there's a couple little hints she drops there that she's doing outright COVID denialism. She says this fictitious
Well, I mean, that's what all conservatives do, remember?
Fictitious need to slow the spread. Look, it's one thing to argue I think their stuff goes too far. And on that I might agree. It's another thing to say it's a fictitious need to slow the spread. Fictitious need to slow the spread. There's nothing fictitious about wanting to stop the spread of a deadly virus. Now, by the way, she goes on to say, like, the recovery rate from this is like 99.75% or something to that effect. And
it actually is.
What a...
First off, it's 97. It's about 97.8%. And secondly, they're finding most of the people that get severe illness, or even moderate, and quite a few with moderate illness from COVID-19, continue to suffer from long COVID. And we've actually had people die of complications due to long COVID.
And also, the older you are, too, you're more likely to die, too, from it.
Yep.
But that's inconvenient facts to dumb conservatives. You know that.
Dumb way of talking about this pandemic. Because that gives a misleading picture. Yeah, and we have, what? Again, 736,000 deaths in the United States. It's the biggest mass death event in United States history, and you're downplaying it. And I forget who said it. It might be one of the founding fathers. There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. That's a great example of, giving a statistics that's colossally misleading. And, this is Candice Owens' job. So don't fall, like, her smug condescension, how she always talks like she's, super certain of herself and super arrogant and super on top of it. There's no way you could look at that unless you're already colossally brainwashed and say anything other than she's lying, she's being misleading, she's being hyperbolic, because she's a partisan hack. So there you have it. And again, to the media, there's no reason to overreach when she says ridiculous things in the segment that you're taking something out of context from.
And to put that in perspective, America, well, based upon Kyle's numbers he said back then, that's almost as much, if not more people than America has lost in its bloodiest war ever, the Civil War. So put that in perspective. More people died in just a year than the bloodiest war America ever fought in. That was 4 years long. So, of course, Candice Owens is an idiot. She's so stupid, she rotted the battery of my 3DS to the point it almost died on me. And I just charged it early this morning.
Okay. Oh, by the way, the US has now got more confirmed deaths from COVID than soldiers died in the Civil War. It's up to 783,000 today.
Oof. So, what do you guys say since you're down there? Are you afraid about getting taken to Auschwitz or something to be killed?
Nope.
So you're saying she's an idiot again?
Actually, that's probably a bit more likely to happen since, but that's a whole other thing.
So you're saying she's an idiot and a liar again?
As usual.
I'm not surprised. So I think we're done. We're done laughing at this idiot. So what do you want to talk about next?
Liberty University endorsing sexual assault.
Oh man, now we gotta go. Man, I can't believe we went from laughing. Now we gotta be cringing at something really bad. I just saw this on Twitter some time ago. Damn it, Link, start working. Discord, why are you not working like you used to? But anyways, for anyone who don't know, Liberty University is some dumb religious fundamentalist university. And of course, as always, with religious institutions, they downplay sexual assault of women. Are you surprised?
Nope.
As you got the article up?
Hang on, I can probably get that up in a moment.
This is from ProPublica. Oh my god, this is a long-ass one. Well, here's an... Oh my god, 38 minutes! Wow! I don't think we're going to be able to go for that really quickly.
Oh,
When Elizabeth Axley first told Liberty University officials she had been raped, she was confident that they would do the right thing. After all, the evangelical Christian school invoked scriptures to encourage students to report abuse. Well, that's your first mistake. Speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves, for the rights of all who need an advocate. Proverbs, whatever. It was quoted in large type across an information sheet from the school's office tasked with handling discrimination and abuse. Axley, whatever, was a first-year student at Liberty in the fall of 2017. She had been at the school less than 3 months. One Saturday night, she went to a Halloween party at an off-campus apartment and drank 8 shots of vodka, along with a couple of mixed drinks. She didn't remember much after that until she recalls waking up with a fellow student on top of her and his hand pressed over her mouth. Ooh, that definitely isn't looking good. After Alexei returned to her dorm, she called the campus police department. One of the officers drove her to the local hospital, where records show a nurse documented 15 bruises, welts, and lacerations on her arm, face, and tattoo. Oh boy. And of course, this is a list of all her injuries. Like 15 different injuries in total. Exie wasn't sure what to do next, but she did know that she wanted the man to stay away from her, as she recalled. So when she got back to her dorm that Sunday morning, she again told someone at Liberty, her resident advisor. The RA, Alexei said, told her not to report it, saying Alexei could be found to have violated the school's prohibition against drinking and fraternizing with the opposite sex.
what the fuck?
Because you men and women can't be together in Christian university, don't you know? Because very bad things will happen, and that's why we have to blame the women for when they get raped. Remember? What the fuck is with this shit?
Brand that shit.
Holy crap! So she can't report because it violated the school's prohibition against drinking and fraternizing. I don't give a fuck. If she's raped, you need to fucking report it. Jesus Christ. Oh, and here's where it gets even more cringy. Instead, the RA offered a pray with Alexis. I was really confused, she recalled. They were making it seem like I have done something wrong. Exactly, because that's how all these religious fundamentalist universities and all that crap always think about women. And conservatives, too. They always think women are the one that are in the wrong. I'm sure that's right. They blamed her because she got drunk and that shit. It doesn't matter if you got drunk. You don't deserve to get raped. What the fuck? Same goes for hanging out with men. There's no valid reason to ever expect to get raped. Jesus Christ. She didn't want to pray. She wanted the school to do something about what had happened. I didn't want to get fined or punished, but I wasn't going to let this keep me from reporting my assault. Go down here. The next day, she went to the school's Federated Mandated Office for Investigating Sexual Harassment Violence. She had prepared saved text from that week. He was all over you, one concerned friend had written to her. It was pretty damn weird. I fucking remembered making noises and him covering my mouth. Oh my god. She texted another friend in the early morning hours. She also took photos of the welts across her chest, multiple lacerations on her upper arm, and bruised left. Yeah, it pretty much sounds like she just got so drunk that someone took advantage of her, which is unfortunately pretty common. When I went to that office, Alexei said, I was ready. And here's the text that we just talked about, if you see the picture right here. All right.
Yeah.
But the official who took the complaint didn't seem interested. Alexei recalled Bruce C. was a lead investigator with Liberty University's Equity Office, which is responsible for looking into potential violations of Title IX, the civil rights law that bans sexual discrimination on campus that receives federal funding. Liberty students receive almost $800 million a year in federal aid. Instead of considering her evidence, she said Bruce C. started throwing questions at her. Why had Alexei gone to the party? What had she had to drink? How much? I was immediately felt judged. Yeah, it doesn't matter what party you went to or how much you drank or you got drunk or whatever. There's no valid reason to get raped. Period. End of discussion. As you were saying?
That's exactly what I've been saying.
Then Alexei waited. She received email update saying that the school was looking into her case. After 5 months, Alexei heard that Brucey from Liberty had completed its investigation and a committee was now going to consider the case. Brucey invited Alexei to first come to the office and review the file. Alexei went in and looked through the materials. The photos of her injury, she recalled, were no longer there. Alexei said that she had asked what had happened. Brucey told her that the photos had been removed because they were too explicit.
Oh my fucking god.
Of course.
You people somewhere there live in the fucking 1500s. With the
Of
bloody
course.
Puritans in Cromwell.
Of course. Showing pictures of a victim of rape? That's too explicit.
At the correction, 1600s.
I feel like I've been punched in the stomach, she recalled. I have been relying on them all these months to take my evidence into account when considering my case, and it wasn't even in my file. A few days later, she received another email from the university. It said that the case was moving ahead for a final decision. She needed to sign a document acknowledging that she could be found to have violated the university's code of conduct. The Liberty Way covers nearly all aspects of student life, including bans on drinking and being in any state of undress with a member of the opposite sex, which of course is none of your business. Cry more, deal with it. And again, like I said, that's not a valid reason to get raped or even defended. As the document that Alexei received phrased it, by moving ahead with the case, she was acknowledging that she herself could face possible disciplinary actions. Ah, yes, you were raped.
I'm gonna have someone rape her again.
You were raped? You gotta face disciplinary actions because you got drunk and hanged out with men. Oh, boo fucking who? What a bunch of fucking prudish babies. This is why you should not go to a religious fundamentalist university, everyone. Because they defend this shit. Universities across the country...
They encourage rape in some cases.
Well, parts of the Bible do encourage it, remember?
Yep.
Yep. Universities across the country have faced long scrutiny for their handling and mishandling of sexual assault cases, but Liberty University's response to such a case stands out. Interviews with more than 50 former Liberty students and staffers, as well as records from more than a dozen cases, show how an ethos of sexual purity, as emboldened by the Liberty Way, has led to school officials discouraging, dismissing, and even blaming women students who have tried to come forward with claims of sexual assault.
That's disgusting.
It's pretty
typical of the not sexism, but poor misogyny of religious universities.
But women are always the fault for everything, remember? Oh my god, these people are disgusted. 3 students, including her, recalled being made to sign forms acknowledging possible violations of the Liberty Way after they sought to file complaints about sexual assaults. Others say they were also warned against reporting what had happened to them. Students say that even Liberty University's police officers discouraged victims from pursuing charges after reporting assaults. What in the absolute fuck is this?
This is
awful.
This is just on an entirely new level. Like they're literally endorsing rape. But they're implicitly endorsing rape.
But that's what the Bible says, silly, so of course we're going to defend it. You know that. Some students still confide in school staff who at times did not reach the case to the Title IX office despite being legally required to do so. When students filed complaints themselves, they are often not given legal required notices that they had the option of going to the police, which honestly you should be going there first because of this crap. In the fall of 2013, Diane Stargell sought the help of the university's mental health counselors, telling the counselor she met that she'd been raped by another student at a party off campus. Stargell recalled that the counselor listened and then asked her again to sign a victim notice that warned she could be found to have broken the Liberty Way if she chose to move forward. Terrified of losing her scholarship, she signed a paper and did not formally report being assaulted. So, someone was raped, and they didn't go along with the report because they're afraid of losing their scholarship.
Yep.
Oh my god, I don't even know if I want to keep reading this. This goes on forever and ever. This is just so disgusting.
I know, right? But God, I don't know, 'cause the more I'm reading of this, It's just getting worse and worse and worse.
Oh my god. I feel like Liberty bullied me into silence after what happened to me, she said. I've always regretted I never got my day in court, but now at least I can stand up and say, yeah, it happened to me, which is unfortunate. Amanda Stevens also remembered being warned that she could be fined for having violated the Liberty Way after she reported being raped to the school's Title IX office in April 2015. Stevens recalled that a school official listed her potential infractions: drinking, though she had not been drinking at the time of the assault, having premarital sex, and being alone with a man in the campus. Oh, whoop-de-doo! Big deal that she...
The normal young adult shit is enough to get to be, basically, you're doing young adult things. You deserve to be raped. Liberty University.
I remember thinking, what? Are you kidding me? She said I could get in trouble for coming forward and reporting. After an investigation, Stevens recalled receiving a letter saying that the student she had reported for assault had been found not responsible. Oh my god, how much worse can this go? Liberty officials did not...
It is. It's getting worse.
Liberty officials did not respond to detailed questions sent weeks ago, but one person who received them did ultimately reply. Scott Lamb, who was Liberty University's senior vice president of communications until earlier this month. Lamb worked at Liberty until October 6th when he said he was fired for internally blowing the whistle on the university's reported failures of response to concerns about sexual assault. So someone who actually reported that they're fucked up for not combating sexual assault and rape, they got fired for it. What in the actual fuck? The whistleblower got fired, not the people that defend this shit. This is awful. The emails for ProPublica were definitely ignored, said Lamb. He recalled himself and one colleague trying to make the case for his school to respond. We said, listen, the optics of this are killing us. Is there anything we can message something? A message about empathy? Or that we're at least working to get to the bottom of this? And then they dawn on us. They're not working to get to the bottom of this. Exactly, because they don't care. Lamb was the point person who had fielded questions from journalists since he took up his post at Liberty in January 2018. He was one of the people of whom I sent a detailed request to comment this month. Liberty's lack of response was typical, Lamb explained. Concerns about sexual assault would go up the chains and then die, he said. It was a conspiracy of silence. Lamb filed a federal lawsuit alleging that he was fired for raising concerns about Liberty's conduct. Liberty did not respond to detailed questions about Lamb's claims. In the end, all these women were not fined, but two former students did recall being punished after they reported being sexually assaulted. One said that after she was reported being raped to school authorities, she was fined $500 for drinking alcohol and was told she had to attend counseling. The former student, who declined to be named, said she was told her transcript would not be released until she paid. Another student recalled being punished after reporting the potential sexual assault to someone else. Oh my fucking god, what is wrong with these people? We're not even halfway through the article still. Logan Pratt, the friend who had been texting Alexei, said he was concerned by what he saw, told the Title IX official. He seen Alexei being mistreated at the party, he said. The university misinterpreted what he told investigators, giving the false impression that his testimony undercut her recollections rather than buttressing them. Then, a few months after the incident, Pratt said Liberty kicked him out of the school for drinking and other Liberty Way infractions. One other student also said Liberty misinterpreted what she described seeing in Alexei's case. 10 more former students told me they chose not to report the rapes to campus officials amid fears of being punished. I knew I would face the blame for putting myself in that situation, said this woman, a Liberty alum, that's pronounced, who said she was assaulted by a Liberty graduate student. A lawsuit filed in July against Liberty recounted similar patterns. The suit, brought by a dozen unnamed former students, asserts that the school failed to help victims of sexual assault and that the school's student honor code made assault more likely by making it difficult or impossible for students to report sexual violence. The suit also claims that the public and repeated retaliation against women who did report their victimization create a dangerous campus environment. Liberty has declined to comment on the pending litigation. Well, no shit. No shit they would deny talking about because it's so damning what they fucking did. Oh my god, what do you gotta say about this so far still?
This is absolutely disgusting, but not surprising.
But they're women, of course. They're inferior to us, remember?
That's what they believe, yeah.
Historically, and based on the cases you presented to me, I do not believe Liberty had the conception of sexual assault that is consistent with criminal law, and certainly not with federal civil rights and campus safety, said this person who helped write a law governing how universities receive funded and handle sexual assault cases. Liberty's handling of cases has often added to the pain of the women I spoke with, said the woman we first talked about earlier. Waiting for Liberty to decide on her case, she began missing classes. She didn't want to risk bumping into her alleged assailant. Her grades being plummeted. She skipped meals and started sleeping during the day. She would have panic attacks constantly, like full body shaking, laying on the floor, no matter where they were, in a class or in a library, said a friend of hers and a fellow Liberty student. Alexi's memories of that time were scattered. She was knocked even further off balance when the student who she said attacked her filed a lawsuit alleging that she had defamed it by recounting her stories to others. The side reached a non-monetary settlement a few months later. The parties agreed not to disparage each other over doubtful and disputed claims. Asked about her accusations, a former student told me that I didn't rape her, and that he also thought the Liberty didn't investigate the case properly. She has no doubts about what happened in the months afterwards. She scrolled again and again through the phones she had taken. The photos she had taken of her injuries. They gave her a small measure of calm. I would remind myself that I have evidence and that I have done everything I could to document and report what happened, she said. I told myself, how could the school not take action? All someone had to do was look at the photos. And of course, looks like it's just talking about the history of Liberty University. And it looks like, according to this, they have faced sexual and financial scandals in the recent years. Why am I not surprised? Why am I not surprised? So, wait, here we go. Let's see what Liberty Way says right here. Statement on sexuality and relationships. So this is what Liberty University says on it. Sexual relationship outside of a biblically ordained marriage between a natural-born man and a natural-born woman is not permissible at Liberty University. Cry more. While mental thoughts, temptations, and states of mind are not regulated by the Liberty Way, statements of behavior that are associated with the LGBT states of mind are prohibited. Cry more that gay people go to your university. For example,
more about the existence of gay people.
For example, romantic displays of affection with members of the same sex, including holding hands, kissing, and dating, are actions confirming denial of biological birth sex. So against getting people's pronouns correct, using restrooms and changing facilities reserved for persons other than one's birth sex are prohibited. In personal relationships,
basically, it's even accidental misgendering is not allowed. You got to be deliberately. They actually encourage you to deliberately misgender trans people.
In personal relationships, students are encouraged to know and abide by common sense guidelines that avoid the appearance of impropriety. Activities inconsistent with these standards are guidelines or violations to the Liberty Way. How about fuck your Liberty Way? It's nothing but a bunch of prudish crap that's misogynistic, homophobic, and transphobic. How about that?
Every negativist in the book.
What a bunch of crap this is. This is absolutely disgusting. Breaking that ban and engaging in any inappropriate personal contact is punishable by $300 fine, 30 hours of community service, or possible expulsion. How can they do 30 hours of community service like a prison sentence or something like that? That seems a little authoritarian and weird. I don't even know how they would even be able to get away with that. Same with the fine.
Yeah.
Oh my god. This is just so bad. I don't even feel like reading anymore. We've read enough of this crap. So, what do you guys say about this disgusting pile of shit?
It's getting worse and worse and worse.
So we gotta say that it's always women's fault, remember?
Yeah.
Oh my god, this is just disgusting. Hope they get shut down for this. So anything you want to say about this before we get going to the next topic?
This is just, it's disgusting but not surprising.
Because remember guys, women are people too, and you shouldn't be raping them. Simple as that. Alright,
Yep.
So now what do you want to talk about next?
The 2021 elections.
Oh boy. Okay, so of course, I'm sure most people don't know about this But there were elections in America just a few weeks ago. There are elections every year usually, but the election like right after the presidential election is usually like one of the most quietest because there's not many things that are available at the time. There are some governorships pretty much and other proposals, but other than that, really quiet. But of course, there's 2 governorships that were up for grabs, like always, and that's Virginia and New Jersey. And of course, all the Democrats thought they were going to easily get these wins, but believe it or not,
Right.
to my not surprise, no. New Jersey governor, whoever he was, he barely won when he was on track to win by like 10 points or something like that. He barely won. It was like less than 1%. Like, it was really, really close. But of course, in Virginia, the Republican won, destroying Terry McAuliffe, who was the former governor from 2013 to 17, because Virginia doesn't have allowed term limit. I mean, doesn't have consecutive elections. So he got destroyed when everyone thought he was going to win the landslide because he ran on Trump bad and all that. But guess what? As we said, running on Trump is not going to be good enough. And the guy he lost to is a Trumpist who actually, unlike Trump, had a bit of a brain. He appealed to the Trumpsters, which he needed to win, but he also alienated himself from Trump just enough to get the people that voted for Biden in Virginia to vote for him. Because Virginia, the last like decade or so, has been a blue state. It's been becoming more bluer in each presidential election. And guess what? There were polls that showed, like, I think Kyle and Mike covered it, that the suburban women were like the main factors of how Biden won Virginia over Trump. Like, a good chunk of them flipped over to the Republican candidate this time around because he wasn't Trump and he didn't disgust them as much as Trump did. So see what I mean, you idiots? You can't run on just Trump. It's not enough. You have to appeal to them. And McAuliffe was a piece of shit governor who, remember, he only won in 2013 because he ran against the anti-blowjob candidate, remember?
Yeah.
That's how bad it is. That's the only reason he won this time, and going against a Trumpster just isn't enough this time. And of course, there's another one. This one's really sad, and this one really infuriates me. Indiana Walton up in Buffalo lost her election to the person that she fucking beated in the primary, who, unlike all the other Democrats, if you progressives lose, you must accept it gracefully and endorse us and shut the fuck up. But if progressives win, oh no, we're gonna run against you again, and then we're gonna fucking, in my eyes, cheat and win again, and also get Republican donors and fundraisers to help us out too. As her opponent, the current mayor of Buffalo, unfortunately won again, which is very unfortunate. But that one really infuriates me because he shouldn't have run again in the first place. But of course, as always, the Democrats, especially in New York, didn't support her, just like how they didn't support Ben Jealous down here in my state. Absolutely disgusting. So we gotta see about this stuff so far.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, like I said, there is no running is not a winning strategy. Running, as the Republicans learned, is not a winning strategy.
And of course, the we're gonna get to another thing in Minneapolis later on when we get to talk to the culture war stuff. But Kyle actually covered this too, and I think Mike covered Indiana Walton's loss. But let's watch Kyle's video about why McAuliffe lost. Discord, why are you not working anymore? Why is it when I press copy link you don't work anymore? It's getting really annoying.
So we had a wee bit of an election yesterday, ladies and gentlemen, and probably the biggest and most consequential election of the night was the Virginia governor's race. You had Terry McAuliffe, who is a corporate Democrat. He was once governor of Virginia already. You can't run for consecutive terms in New Jersey, so he was governor before Northam. Now Northam, a Democrat, is in office, and then McAuliffe was running again to be governor, and he was running against Glenn Youngkin, who's a businessman and an interesting kind of Republican. Now, we'll talk about this as we go along here, but the bottom line is Virginia is a D+10 state. Biden won that state by 10 points. It's generally viewed as a safe Democratic state at this point. And what was the result? The Republicans draxed them skloused. Glenn Youngkin ended up winning, and when all said and done, it's going to be by a fairly comfortable margin, especially given the fact, again, that it's a D+10 state. So if he ends up winning by 3 points, let's say, that's a crushing victory. That's a crushing victory. because a Republican shouldn't be able to get anywhere near the governorship in a state like Virginia. So that begs the question, well, what did Glenn Youngkin do right as a Republican running, and what did Terry McAuliffe do wrong as a Democrat? Now, boy, oh boy, the discourse around this has been the most frustrating thing I've seen in politics in a while. So we're going to get to a totally separate segment on this, but of course, the chorus is out there already blaming the left
it's
for Terry
another thing
McAuliffe's
too.
laws.
They're blaming us progressives for his laws.
And some other issues, which again, I'll bite my tongue. We'll get to separate segments on this stuff. But also, in the case of Glenn Youngkin, how did he walk the fine line and split the difference and become a palatable Republican in the era of Trump, where obviously Trump lost the last presidential election? So I have the answer to all of those questions. First and foremost, let's start with Terry McAuliffe's closing ad, because this highlights in a very clear way why Terry McAuliffe was a completely lackluster candidate.
How did we end up here? The lies, the division. It starts when we give room for hate to grow.
You also had very fine people on both sides.
And for some, they embrace it.
I was honored to receive President Trump's endorsement.
But leadership requires taking a stand.
I have a message to all the white supremacists and the Nazis who came into Charlottesville today. Go home. You are not wanted in this great Commonwealth.
And not giving oxygen to the lies.
The single biggest issue,
The most important issue
is talking about the election fraud.
So let's just audit the voting machines.
This election is about lifting up all Virginians and protecting our democracy. What we stand for and what kind of Commonwealth our kids will inherit. Let's choose a better way.
I'm Terry McAuliffe, candidate for governor, and I sponsored this ad.
So Terry McAuliffe ran on, hey, you guys, Donald Trump is bad. I don't know if you know this, Donald Trump is really, really bad. Donald Trump is no longer the president of the United States. This actually goes to show you in a very clear way the hollowness of the corporate Democrats. The strategy that Biden went on is, hey, you guys, Trump is really, really, really bad. You already had 4 years of him, so you know what to do. Let's go back to normal. Now, usually a go back to normal message doesn't win because normal ain't so great for the overwhelming majority of Americans. But it was a rare instance where it worked for Biden, particularly because the country was a complete mess. Trump was just too crazy. COVID was completely rampant.
And honestly, I still say to this day, the only reason Trump lost because of COVID. I think if that COVID wasn't there, he probably would have destroyed Biden. Just like all the polls showed before COVID became really, really bad.
Everybody did feel like we sort of went off the rails. But this isn't any sort of long-term strategy for Democrats to win. What are you going to do? Talk about Trump in, 2048? Is that what you're going to do? Donald Trump is no longer in office. Why are you talking about Trump? And, the gist of McAuliffe's approach is the old school Tom Perez, head of the DNC, joke that we always made, which is, I'm for good things and I'm against bad things. And I think that people are good people and we should treat people with dignity and respect. And I'm going to say a bunch of good words like tolerance and diversity. And I like tolerance and diversity. Do you like tolerance and diversity?
Please drop out of the Maryland governor race, please. I don't want you.
Shut your mind off and just vote for me and say Republican bad and Trump bad, so Glenn Youngkin bad. And, the results speak for themselves, but it's utterly hollow. There's no there in that message. You're not telling people what you're going to do, what you want to do, your vision for the country. You don't even have a main issue or two that you're hammering away on where you could say, I'm the good guy on this, and my opponent is pushing for a position that is way out of lockstep with the needs of the people. So, Terry McAuliffe's loss is, there's a number of factors that go into it. He has the personality of a dead goat. That guy has a negative charisma, so that alone hurts a political candidate massively. But outside of that, you got this Trump is bad message, which is like, okay, and then what? And then the other thing is, even if you're following this thing in a very detached way, the negotiations that are currently going on in Washington, D.C. over this Build Back Better bill, they're comical. They're comical. So Democrats take, a bunch of ideas that poll phenomenally popular, and then over time, they strip out provision after provision after provision after provision.
Which we're going to be talking about later, too.
A shell of a decent bill with loopholes that you can drive a Mack truck through. And what do you expect? Voters to reward you for this? When you say, hey, we're dropping Medicare expansion, which polls at 80%. We're dropping lowering drug prices, which polls at 80%. We're dropping paid family leave, which Americans desperately want. You expect when you're dropping all those things that you're going to get rewarded for that? So at this point, Democrats at the national level and at the state level have a stench on them. Why? Well, we're still dealing with COVID, and they're not delivering on anything. The last time they delivered was a stimulus check a long time ago, and that stimulus check was a lot less than what they said they would even deliver. They said we're going to give you $2,000 checks, and then they weaseled their way all the way down to $1,400 and said, oh, but Trump already gave you $600, so we're going to add the $1,400 to the $600. That's what we're going to do.
Oh my God, my mother buys that
You're
stupid
not going to get
argument
away
all
with
the
this
time. It's
sleazy
so
used car
infuriating.
salesman bullshit. No disrespect to used car salesmen. There was a time where I was a car salesman, so definitely no disrespect to them. But it's just absolutely devastating and pathetic. Now, on the flip side, what Glenn Youngkin did is fascinating. So Glenn Youngkin had to thread the needle. And the needle was, how do I not piss off Trump's voters, who still make up the majority of the base of the party? How do I not piss off Trump voters while chipping away at suburbanites who had flipped to Joe Biden in the previous election? That is no easy task, but Glenn Youngkin did it. So how did he do it? Well, thing number one is he threaded the needle in an artful way on Trump. So, Trump endorsed him. Glenn Youngkin had used some rhetoric that sort of fed into the big lie that Trump won the election, but he largely steered clear of it. He didn't want Trump to come and campaign for him in Virginia. He didn't even mention the issue of immigration, even with all the issues going on at the southern border right now. What he did with his campaign is focus like a laser on culture war issues. He went all in on culture war issues, namely education policy and critical race theory. And the idea that he was pitching was, well, Democrats, want this critical race theory garbage in the classroom. They don't want to teach your kids the idea of colorblindness, that we shouldn't see color and we should accept people for who they are. They want to teach rank sectarianism. They want to divide people along racial lines. They want to, make the argument that whitey is evil, and that's what should be taught in the classroom. Now, is this a true narrative? Look, at best, there's only a tiny grain of truth in that. At worst, it's just not true, and they're hyping up a boogeyman.
Which is not true either.
But if you hammer away and hammer away and hammer away, you can convince people of it. But the worst part is, what did Terry McAuliffe do? Followed Glenn Youngkin right down the rabbit hole. So Glenn Youngkin was effectively like, I want to make this a culture war battle. That's what I want to do. And Terry McAuliffe said, yes, sir. Where do I sign up for that? You can make whatever incendiary claim about Democrats that you want to make, and embedded in my response to you will be, this is a legitimate battle on a legitimate issue that should define an election. So when all you do as a Democrat is play defense on the culture war and go down that culture war rabbit hole, and your only message outside of that is, seriously, you guys, Donald Trump is really, really, really bad. What do you expect to happen? What do you expect to happen?
You're just not convincing.
So, the left is screwed on two fronts. Because if you listen to the technocratic DC careerist insiders that staff a lot of these Democratic campaigns, they will hammer in your head that you cannot go left on economics. That's unpopular, even though it's phenomenally popular. They'll tell you it's unpopular, don't go there. Centrism is cool, centrism is a winner. So then you have this milquetoast, non-existent economic message. And then the argument from many lefties is, no, actually, you should fight the culture war head on. You should lean into the culture war head on. And so, if you listen to the left, you have these overly woke young people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. And so you look unappealing on two fronts. You look unappealing in the sense that you'll go down whatever culture war rabbit hole the right wants you to go down, and you'll lose on that front. And if you talk about economics, which he didn't, but if you do talk about economics, he would have made an affirmative case for milquetoast, watered-down corporate centrism, which is also unpopular. So what do you expect to happen in a situation like this? It's a D+10 state, and Terry McAuliffe blew it. So Glenn Youngkin, all he had to do was change the conversation, change the debate, don't say anything about economics either, because he's probably smart enough to know that as a businessman and a right-winger, his positions are not popular on economics, so just change the conversation completely to culture war tripe, go all...
Funny thing, too, is I actually covered, I can't remember who it was that actually covered it, too, but he actually did do some, populist left-wing economic policies, too. Like, if I remember correctly, I read somewhere that he actually wanted to increase teachers' pay, which is something that...
Lovely.
And some, I don't know about, I can't remember if he fully supported, but I could have swore I saw something about him maybe somewhat raising the wage instead of going up to $15, maybe a $12 increase or something like that. So maybe somewhat support raising the minimum wage, and a couple of other things too. Oh, and he wanted to get rid of a regressive tax on groceries and stuff like that too.
On that, define your opponent, and also just walk that fine line on Trump. And Glenn Youngkin also had the aesthetic of more of an old school Republican, more of just a regular schmegular businessman Republican. And that was palatable, particularly to the suburbanites in this era. He did just enough towing of the Trump line to get the base to turn out, and he looked just normal enough to get the...
Like, a good example of this would be my aunt, who's a rich bitch. She would always vote for Republican, but not Trump, because he was so insulting to her. She wants one of those moderate Republicans, being nice and all that. She would definitely probably vote for Youngkin if he's that good. I mean, not like Trump at all.
Suburbanites to flip back to him. So the solution here is, for Republicans, the lesson for Republicans is you have to walk that fine line on Donald Trump. Don't go too crazy and Trumpy, but also don't put your middle finger up to the base like Liz Cheney does. And then on top of that, just go all in on culture war issues and change the conversation to an area where you define your opponent and you can hammer away. That's the lesson for Republicans. And it worked for Glenn Youngkin. Now, there are multiple lessons for Democrats, but you have to shut the fuck up about the culture war. Shut up about the culture war. change the nature of the debate and the conversation back to populist economics.
Like Bernie
where the left position is
does.
phenomenally popular. Now again, Terry McCall isn't for populist economics, so he wouldn't run on that. But that would have helped. He probably would have won if he just hammered away on economic stuff. I'm gonna raise the minimum wage, he's not. Something like that. Focus on economics and just stop nominating candidates that have the charisma of a dead goat. So those are the lessons of this election. Those are the lessons. Republicans need to walk the fine line on Trump and then change the conversation to culture war issues because they can't win on economics. And Democrats need to actually break away from new Democrat.
And also, they wouldn't be able to win on the cultural issues, but the Democrats are too stupid to even talk about them, that they lose that one as well,
Corporatism.
sadly.
Break away from this old model that is outdated. Actually talk about popular economic policies. Don't go down the culture war rabbit hole. This is the reality. Look, I said it once, I'll say it again. I said it more than once. I said it a zillion times. In 1938, Democrats had 80% of the House of Representatives and 80% of the Senate. FDR, who was elected in the early 1930s, he got elected president 4 times.
And the funny thing about 1938, the Democrats actually lost a lot of seats in the House and Senate that year, if you didn't know that, actually.
Jeez.
Before we had term limits. What's the lesson from that?
So I'm not fully sure if that number's correct.
Go all in on economic populism. Kick out the big money. Go all in on economic populism. Deliver materially for the American people. And Democrats will crush. I'm sure if you talk to any, corporate idiot pundit today, they'll tell you it's impossible for this country to ever have 80% Dems in the House and 80% Dems in the Senate in today's day and age. It's impossible for a president to win like over 400 electoral votes. Today, we're too partisan. Wrong! We just haven't had a president who represents the material interest of the American people, arguably since FDR and maybe a splash of JFK exceeded the war on poverty, the Great Society. Actually deliver for people, and they'll deliver for you. And so, Terry McCall was a terrible candidate, but beyond that, even at the national level now, Democrats have a stench on them. Not handling COVID, not doing anything right on economics, not delivering for the people. If anything, all the news that ever comes out is, we're stripping out this popular provision, and this popular provision, and this popular provision, and we can't do shit. And look, it's President Sinema and VP Manchin, and they're calling all the shots. That's where we're at. But, again, having said all this, hold your horses. Oh, it's coming. Oh, it's coming. That train is right on time. You know exactly who they're blaming for this loss, and it's the left. So more on that in a little bit.
And I actually looked it up, too. In 1938, the Republicans gained 8 Senate seats, and they gained 72 House election seats in 1938. And that was because after the 1936 election, FDR decided to go more conservative on the economic issues. And then when he realized how bad it was, that's when he went pretty much even. That's when he pretty much said, "Fuck you, conservatives! I'm going to go back to what I wanted to do, like I did in 1932." Now, I don't have the exact number of. It's not showing me the exact number of how many Democrats still hold, so maybe Kyle's number still might be correct, but I highly doubt with all that loss. Because I knew that because conservatives always told me when I destroyed PragerU years ago about that massive loss he had. So yeah, we got to see about McCall losing the election in that regard.
Yeah, pretty not right. Unfortunately, when he did eventually go back to being progressive.
Because, yeah, if you ran a progressive, they wouldn't have lost, you idiot. Because you can't appeal on Trump. And, of course, now we got Mike's video about, unfortunately, Indiana Walton's loss.
When India Walton was ultimately defeated by Byron Brown and his write-in campaign, she conceded. She had the decency to concede, which is something that he refused to do after she beat him in a Democratic Party primary. He ran a sore loser write-in campaign, and he cobbled together as many big donors as he could find, and he defeated her, proving that money equals electoral success in late-stage capitalist America.
Well, we already knew that.
Now, this isn't something that we can change. Progressives are accepting that she lost, and we have to move on. Having said that, though, there still should be a level of accountability from the Democratic Party establishment as it relates to Byron Brown, because they always tell us, if you lose in the Democratic
Yeah, her loss was just absolutely disgusting. That was shameful what he
Party
did.
primary, it is incumbent on you to endorse the Democrat and support that person. But here, we saw that not only did Byron Brown refuse to endorse India Walton, but the Democratic Party in New York refused to weigh in and endorse India Walton when she was the Democratic Party nominee. So if they want this whole party unity line to stick, and they don't want a bunch of progressive candidates to run their own sore loser write-in campaigns after they're defeated by incumbent Democrats, then they have to at least prove to us that they care a little bit about this message of unity, and it wasn't all just a facade to get us to shut the fuck up after we lose primaries. So there's some progressives who are calling on the DNC to strip Byron Brown of his credentials from the DNC, and I think that it's not going to change anything, but it's the bare minimum that the DNC and the Democratic Party establishment can do to at least virtue signal to us about their seriousness when it comes to unity. So David Siders and Holly Otterbein of Politico explain, when you pull a stunt like this, somebody wins a primary, a working class woman, and you go to every rich donor in both parties to fund a write-in campaign, it's a disgrace, said Larry Cohen, chair of the Bernie Sanders aligned group Our Revolution. Cohen, a DNC member himself, said he plans to organize an effort to press Democrats to remove Brown from his post on the national committee, and on Monday, India Walton, the unsuccessful Democratic nominee for Buffalo mayor, threw her weight behind the move. Not only do I support the DNC revoking Byron Brown's post, I believe it would set a dangerous precedent not to, she said in a statement to Politico. In addition to Our Revolution, the New York chapter of the left-wing Working Families Party also supports the effort to oust Brown from the DNC. Now again, revoking his DNC post would do nothing. It's merely a symbolic concession that progressives are asking the Democratic Party establishment to make. Because again, they would be outraged if any progressive that's running for Congress dared to run a sore loser write-in campaign after they were defeated in a primary. We know exactly what they'd say. Oh, you're helping the Republicans. This is bad for unity. I mean,
even though Brown got Republican money to help beat Indiana Walton.
Utter any criticism, even a tepid criticism of a Democratic Party incumbent, they freak the fuck out. So if they're serious about unity, which they're not, then at a minimum they do this. But I mean, party operatives are responding to this, and they're saying, yeah, fuck off. And Byron Brown is kind of saying the same thing, pouring salt in the wound. This, to me, sounds like another case of sour grapes out of Our Revolution, said John Ranish, a New York-based Democratic strategist. I think that progressives are feeling cornered, which is why you're seeing a lot of the lashing out. Where Democrats did badly, and it was a bad night in last week's election, a lot of it was a loud and clear message from voters that people feel the party is going too far to the left.
Not true.
In a statement, the Brown campaign said, Mayor Byron Brown's Democratic Party bona fides are well known and beyond reproach. Any questions of them by Bernie Sanders or India Walton are without merit and are simply sour grapes, following a decisive write-in defeat in the Buffalo mayoral election last week. Stu Loser, a Democratic strategist in New York who previously worked for Schumer, said, why would we kick Mayor Brown off the DNC? He's proven he can win tough races. The prospect of Brown, former state Democratic Party chair, being stripped of his leadership position in the party is slim to none. Even the progressive Democrats calling for the rebuke acknowledge that. You're not likely going to see Chair Jamie Harrison at the DNC or anybody at the White House do one thing, said Cohen, who described the effort as an uphill slog. So in response to any accountability for him basically saying party unity my ass, they're saying, go fuck yourself. Spitting in the face of India Walton, Bernie Sanders, and not just them, an entire wing of the party who they're on the cusp of losing permanently. I can't tell you how many leftists I know who are just done with electoral politics, and for good reason, because it hasn't yielded any meaningful results. No matter how many times we vote for Democrats loyally, nothing changes. They don't do nearly enough. So, they want us to vote for them. They want loyalty, but...
And that's why I say you gotta do both. Take over the Democratic Party, but also run third-party candidates to take some power away from them. You gotta do both.
Yet, at every opportunity, they spit in our fucking eyes. I mean, again, I'm going to say it for the third time. Imagine if a progressive incumbent ran a primary campaign against, or a progressive challenger ran a primary campaign against an incumbent and lost and then ran this sore loser write-in campaign. They would never accept it. They would call on him or her to step down. But, when it goes the other way, they don't care. Unity only goes one way with the Democratic Party. Now, one more statement that I want to read. This is from Jay Jacobs. He's the chair of the New York Democratic Party, and this is the guy who compared India Walton to David Duke. Here's what he says. He says that Brown is a good Democrat, and progressives should, quote, move on. Now, he wasn't speaking specifically about the campaign to remove Byron Brown from the DNC. Rather, he was just speaking about him beating her with this write-in campaign. And look, they are showing you who they are right now. It's not like this is a surprise. We knew who they were from the beginning. But the next time there's some contentious Democratic Party primary and they talk about the progressive being a little bit too contentious, making too many attacks, show them what they said here. Use this against them. Throw it in their faces. Because if they want unity from us, but they don't exhibit that themselves, express unity or any mutual respect whatsoever, then we absolutely should not grant it to them. Yeah. But again, none of this is surprising. I've been covering this for years now. And the Democratic Party is rotten and corrupt to its core. They don't care about winning elections. All they care about is appeasing their corporate donors. And Byron Brown is a proxy for their corporate interests. So they're happy that he won over someone who actually cared about the lives of people in Buffalo. And that's sad, but that's the state of affairs in American politics.
He should be disgraced and kicked out of the Democratic Party completely. Fucking take the loss
like... and literally.
Yeah. Fucking disgusting how you can not accept the loss, take Republican money to run against a progressive that beat your ass. So what you gotta say about that before we get on to the next topic?
Oh, absolutely stupid.
And, hey, you know what, too? Indiana, run again next time. You know you can beat them. You keep doing it, and hopefully next time you can convince the people otherwise to vote for you again. And hopefully, I doubt it, because I think this guy's been there for a while. Hopefully there's some sort of term limit that could prevent him from running again, too, for God's sake. Alright, so now, what do you want to get to next?
Vaccine hesitancy and anti-vax bullshit.
Alright, so this is the topic you wanted to talk about, so what were you talking about specifically?
Oh, okay. Part of it is, let's get this thing. I just want to say this. There's something Jimmy Dore did that completely rips apart his credibility.
Oh, you're talking about the Sean video?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a pretty good video. I'm sure Harry's having a meltdown over it.
He did.
Oh, really?
He absolutely did.
He never told me that. He hasn't talked to me like in a week.
Yeah, ever since he called, oh no, sounds like he talked to you since, here we go.
So it's mostly about Door, or is it utter vaccine hesitancy crap?
There's a lot of other hacks and vaccine hesitancies. It's just Dawn's, I sort of quickly exposed the big one that Door did. Oh god, I forgot that I've got these print screens set up with two screens now. This is from Sean's video.
Where you getting sources?
This is where, oh, wait, that right? Yeah, no. Hold on, I'm gonna put a comment in.
Yeah, you're basically showing the parts that he cut out, or his producer, remember, cut out.
Yes. This is where they took the first bit, this is the blind, and you cut. What was it? Yeah, he cut out throughout July and August. Cases in Singapore ticked up to over 100 per day after nearly a year of almost no infections due to the city's previous zero tolerance policy. And that policy, and basically, actually, it's even worse because it looks like he's chopped.
A lot.
He's gone to policies from policy as well. And he's also cut from foreign visitors. So yeah, this is just one example, but this it's not just Dawn that does this. There are others that do it. A lot of others that do it as well.
Like fucking Rogan and Cucker Tarlson.
Yep. And also, who's the guy that claims to have invented RNA DNA vaccines? Malone? Something Malone?
I don't remember. I think that's the person Harry kept talking about that was on Door recently or something like that.
Yes. Let me get
like, well, while you're thinking...
Robert Malone, that's right. He dismissed one of my links from a guy who let me get Malone back up, and I'll actually... Who is it? Here we go. Let's get this. So this guy this guy from For Better Science, his about page is this. I'm an independent science journalist with around 13 years of biomedical research experience in molecular cell biology, stem cells, and cancer research. The usual science journalism restricts itself to repeating the cues given by scientific elite and leading research institutions. While we mostly read in the science is the voice of power and money, the climate of fear is omnipresent in science. Bad science is very rarely exposed to the open. Fraud and ethics breaches are routinely covered up, while accusations and criticisms are raised only behind closed doors and are often unfairly or even wrongfully assigned. There are many good and honest scientists out there, but they have no voice. My site is for them. Therefore, one goal of my site is to give voice to such concerned scientists who would normally never dare to speak out their key for fear of their influential colleagues. Some of these voices below are named, some named are confidential. You can be one of them, just contact me below. And this is the guy, and this same guy literally said, this is the little name of the article, Robert Malone invented anti-vaxxery. And Harry dismissed that as just dismissed it outright as big pharma talking points. That's how much of a doorknob he is.
He told me the same things too when I showed him other stuff. And not even just COVID stuff, other things. He just dismissed things that he just doesn't agree with. Which we're going to get to one of them a little bit later too about the culture war crap. But is there but we already talked about Door, well, you didn't really talk about Cucker Tarlson or Rogan yet. We already covered how much of an idiot he is, and how much of an idiot Tucker Carlson is. But there actually is one person I wanted to bring up recently that's been in news. Aaron Rodgers. Now, do you know? Do you know who he is, though?
I do now.
He is the quarterback for the Packers in the NFL since 2008. Now, of course, the NFL has had a policy for this year for COVID, that they either require players to get vaccinated or like kind of like Biden's policy, or you have to do like weekly tests, wear masks and all stuff like that. And last I checked, I think it was like 95% of the NFL players are vaccinated. But of course, like a lot of the bigger quarterbacks, unfortunately, are not. And Aaron Rodgers said a few months ago that he was immunized, or whatever the fuck he said. I don't even know what the hell that's supposed to mean. But recently, he got COVID, and because of that, he had to miss the Packers visiting the Chiefs, which they lost, and they lost to the point where I know for a fact if Rodgers was playing, they would have won. They lost by only 6 points. It was an easy win for them to get.
I mean, literally cost himself. Lost his team the game.
Well, it's not that big of a loss. They're still deep in the playoff race, but it might hurt them later on. But right now, it's not going to probably matter too much at the moment. And plus, it was a good way to finally see Jordan Love be a starter, since he's going to be Aaron Rodgers' successor probably next year. But he said there was an article on NFL.com because he's not vaccinated and he doesn't want to get vaccinated. And he said the reasons why he didn't want to get vaccinated. And there were like 3 or 4 reasons. The first one he said was he was allergic to, I think, 2 of the vaccines. Which, vaccine...
I think it was.
I can't remember what it was, but that actually is a thing, believe it or not, guys. I remember reading studies, and...
I think that's why Dor had his reactions to the Moderna jab. That might be why he had the reaction that he had. He said he had bad reaction to Moderna.
Yeah.
That's why he swung in on the best pandering to anti-vaxxers. It's actually because he had the bad reaction to the Moderna vaccine.
But anyways, I've seen studies on this, and I'm going to be open with this right now. I'm one of the people that are allergic to vaccines. Every time I've had a vaccine when I was a kid, I always had to go to the hospital afterwards because of the bad reaction I had.
I've had reactions to a few myself, but I've still got a number of them.
But
that's more due to my egg allergy, though, which is why I haven't had a flu vaccine in my entire life.
Same here.
But I'll be able to get one next year. Well, since they've got get the egg product out of the vaccine now.
Well, good for you. But yeah, I've had like 3 vaccines for different shit all the way back when I was like a toddler. Every time I had a bad reaction, I had to go to the hospital afterwards. I had to get an exemption from my school when I went to public school because of it. That's how bad it was. And the studies I've seen, it's vaccine allergies are like 2 out of 1 million people. That's how rare we're talking about. Like 2 people out of 1 million. So if he's indeed true that he's allergic to these vaccines, I mean, like, okay, I mean, it does happen. We can't necessarily blame him for that one. But there are other vaccines he could take as well. And I'm trying to remember exactly what he said too. Was the other issue. I know. Oh my god, there was one thing that he was concerned about. Oh, it was like some sort of blood clot or whatever with the other vaccine.
Yes, Johnson and Astra.
That he's afraid he's going to get blood clots, but the odds are very low, and it's even lower if you're a man. It's more likely if you're a woman, according to the studies that NFL.com posted about when it comes to those blood clots. So I mean, yeah. I don't think.
In fact, the Pfizer Moderna is actually slightly more likely to get myocarditis.
So,
which is the inflammations and sections of the heart.
But if you're concerned about that, I think you're being a little bit too worried, because the effects of getting COVID are probably very likely be a lot worse for you than any reaction from the vaccine. Mm-hmm. And then his last one was, this is the dumbest one, he wants to be a dad soon. He's afraid that COVID vaccines are going to make him infertile.
Oh, God, that conspiracy theory.
There have been so many studies on this. It doesn't. And also, remember, some form of a vaccine has been out since almost a year now. So if anyone's had the vaccine, most likely could have had a kid by now. So by now, we would probably start seeing people with vaccines having kids or able to have kids. And I'm sure they probably still are with no problems. So that's pretty dumb, to say the least. And of course, this is even stupider. It's not a reason, but he actually he believes his buddy Joe Rogan more than doctors. Oh my fucking god, dude! Rodgers, you're actually one of the smarter quarterbacks in the league. Come on. You should know better than to trust him over doctors. Like, come on.
He probably thinks that Anthony Fauci was patient zero of the pandemic.
So, yeah, what do you guys say about that so far about Aaron Rodgers?
Just get the fucking vaccine, mate.
Yes.
You don't care which one you get, just get one of them.
Yeah, and that goes...
We had that thing in the supercars. David Reynolds, he tried to get into New South Wales on a medical exemption, so he didn't have to get vaccinated. But it turns out that medical exemption was not legitimate about a week later. And so he's been booted out of the supercars until he gets vaccinated. Which, he has got his first dose, so he might be okay for Bathurst.
So, yeah, and that also goes for, Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, and especially you, Lamar Jackson, since you got COVID twice. And you fucking missed the Thanksgiving game against the Steelers last year, and Rodgers, you not getting vaccinated cost you a game against the Chiefs that maybe later on could maybe hurt the Packers in the playoff stands right now, since you would be number one right now in the playoff stands if you played the game against the Chiefs and won, but because of that, you're down to the second seed right now. So, you better hope the Cardinals lose out right now, because otherwise you might be stuck as a second seed instead of getting that bye. And you could have avoided that if you just got vaccinated. But yeah, and of course, you're talking about Rogan, Carlson, Dorr, Aaron Rodgers, anyone else that you know of that promotes vaccine hesitancy?
Oh, just the entire everyone on Fox News.
Oh yeah, of course.
Even though we know that they're over 90% vaccinated, I'm actually curious as to who of the major ones are actually ones that are getting tested every day.
Yeah, really.
Because they said over 90%, and I think they said only one of the big ones. So I don't know if it's Carlson, Kennedy, Ingram, or who it might be.
So yeah, for all of you that aren't like, no, I'm not taking a vaccine ever, and just like, I'm just concerned about like the effects of vaccines or whatever, just listen to the doctors and the experts. When they say like the blood clots and all that are like very, very rare to the point where you're more likely to have problems with getting COVID than the vaccine complications.
At this point, what was it? You're actually something like 100 times more likely to get myocarditis from COVID than from the vaccine.
Well, there you go. See, if you getting COVID, you're 100 times more likely to get whatever the complications from the vaccine than the vaccine itself. So, when the health experts and the doctors say you're safer off just to get the vaccine, just listen to them and just take it. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And if you take...
And just because Pfizer and Moderna are benefiting from it, that does not mean you should not get vaccinated.
Yeah. And also, if you take the vaccine, COVID will be less likely an issue, and then you don't have to worry about lockdowns, mandates, wearing masks and all that. We can go back to normal life like we had before pre-COVID. It's really not that big of a deal. Just take it if you're able to. All right. So now what do you want to talk about next?
Culture war bullshit.
Oh yeah, because there's a bunch of videos. I'm actually gonna bring this up too because there was another thing in the 2021 elections, but I want to talk about on here, and that's the culture war crap. And we're gonna talk about Kyle on here because for if you didn't know, in I think it was Minnesota or maybe Minneapolis, but they actually had a vote on to reprioritize police funding to like other like social stuff like we advocate for. Kind of like the defund the police priority, but not actually defund the police itself. But unfortunately, it lost in a blowout, despite in a very liberal state, because people associated it with defund the police. And as we talked about before, when people think defund the police, a lot of people actually think it means completely abolishing police. And it's shit like this that's a big problem, when in reality it isn't. Just like the CRT crap earlier. That was an issue, especially when the people that obsessed with critical race theory don't even know what the hell they're talking about. Which we might even cover that in a minute too. But first, let's get to Kyle's video, because I actually covered a poll about, remember I said earlier about suburban like voters in Virginia that voted for Biden because they hated Trump voted for the Republican person because he didn't discuss them like Trump did. Kyle actually talks about a poll that covers this. So
there was a focus group of Virginia voters after Terry McAuliffe's loss, and the results of this are absolutely fascinating. Check this out. So here you see what Michael says. A focus group of suburban women in Virginia who went from Biden to Youngkin. It's clear that it's the culture war where Dems are losing voters, not policy that is, quote, too progressive as mainstream media hacks want us to believe. And then you can see there it says, we ask which party has better policy proposals. Democrats, 54%. Republicans, only 14%. 32% say it's about the same. Those 32% are hilarious. Then we have which party has cultural values closer to yours. 61% say Republicans, 22% say Democrats, and 17% say about the same. See,
now what's really weird is that the majority of Americans actually agree with Democrats when it comes to social issues. I would say even more than economic issues, like abortion, gay rights. Those are already like 70% of the country supports all that stuff. It's the economic stuff that they don't really support them on, which is weird, especially since the majority of Americans do support them on that one, just not as much as social issues. But it's not really the issues, like social issues, that they have a problem with. It's how they are presented to them, is what I've talked about before, which is how we'll talk about in a second.
This is really interesting. I've never seen a better example of like what I've been yelping about on this show crystallized into one very clear package. Because the fact of the matter is this. And Jacobin just came out with a study that found the same thing. You know what the most popular ideology is and message is? Progressive populism. So in other words, you don't speak in a grad school academic way that's alienating. You know, you don't use that very insular lefty language where you talk about like intersectionality and you say the word Latinx. And a great example of this is actually what Cori Bush said to Joe Manchin when Joe Manchin was and is completely blocking the Build Back Better agenda with stuff like paid family leave and free community college and the child tax credit and, you know, you name it, elder care, all these wonderful things. Cori Bush said something to Joe Manchin along the lines of, Joe Manchin's agenda is anti-immigrant, anti-black, anti-person of color, anti-trans, and she went down the list of like the groups. Now, when I looked at that, I thought, Corey, it's also against West Virginians who he's supposed to be representing.
It's against everyone.
All of the polls out of West Virginia show the provisions of this Build Back Better deal are incredibly popular. In fact, on some of the issues, and even the broader Build Back Better agenda, 50% of Republicans in West Virginia support it. So when you say, I'm gonna take these sectarian groups and point it out one by one, but not say, like, this is literally the working class, full stop. What do? You make it needlessly sectarian. And you actually are underselling the amount of damage it does. Because if you add up the total percentage of all the people it would be in the niche groups that you listed out, you're leaving out, like, what, 30, 40, 50, 60% of the other people who it would hurt massively, and the language is alienating when it doesn't need to be alienating. So in the case of McAuliffe and in the case of Virginia, look, Youngkin would go down these culture war rabbit holes. He would yelp about CRT endlessly. And what did Terry McAuliffe do? Instead of changing the conversation and saying, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm going to raise your minimum wage to $15 an hour, and this idiot's not going to do that. Instead of doing that, what did Terry McAuliffe do? Yeah, the critical race theory, here's why. Let's get into an academic, nuanced conversation about the... You do realize you're a politician, right? And you do realize that you have to try to win votes, right? So what people are saying there is that even though they agree more with Democrats on the policy proposals, they just feel like the Republicans are less shrieky, less insular, and more reflective of their cultural values. And so they've done a much better job of doing the PR on that and doing the marketing on that. And the left, unfortunately, has not. And so, and look, it's extra hard for corporate Democrats. Why? Because they're not actually in favor of any economic positions that would improve your life. So they can't talk about, I want to raise the minimum wage $15 an hour, I want to do the PRO Act, or I want to give everybody health care. They can't talk about that because they're not in favor of that. So that's why it's extra hard for them, because they suck anyway. But for any Democrat who's even marginally okay on economic stuff, the answer is simple. Progressive populism, progressive populism, progressive populism. So if you change the conversation from all the culture shit and you swat it aside and you go right to the economic shit, then as long as you're not culturally alienating people, they're going to vote for you because they just told you, I agree more with you on the policy stuff. I agree more with you on the economic stuff. So look, that's the message. It's very straightforward. You don't have to take my word for it. Don't take my word for it. Don't even take the focus group's word for it, because the focus group is small. You know, could that be a one-off? Sure. What you should look at is the empirical data, and right now we do have that new Jacobin study that looked into it, and the results are conclusive. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out, but unfortunately, it is a hard pill for many on the left to swallow. If you want to see me,
yeah, this is what we talked about this a few episodes ago about how a lot on the left just turn people off because a lot of times they are just too woke and too insular. And have you noticed that too? Like when you use the terms like, I remember when Kyle talked about like intersectionality, and Foch and other lefties had a meltdown because he dismissed intersectionality.
And they were being race reductionists.
Yeah.
Even though we know, Bosch, you are not race reductionists. So why were you sounding like one?
Yeah, a lot of times you guys do sound like race reductionists and boil everything down to race when you don't need to do that. Like when it comes to intersectionality, you know what an intersectional issue that we can fight for, and you can even make the argument for? The drug war. The drug war is a racist policy, but it still does affect everyone, but it affects minorities more. So you know what we can do? Let's push getting rid of the drug war and legalize, tax, and regulate all drugs. That would help everyone, but it would help minorities. What you're saying?
I said, yeah.
But it would also help minorities, too, because they're the worst off affected by it. So that is an intersectional issue that you can focus on from a universal perspective. Why would you not do that? And then, of course, like with the defund the police thing, as I mentioned to Harry about it, did he ever cry to you about this that we had a discussion on me and him DMs about?
He probably did at some point.
Like, he fervently supports defund the police, like the entire movement, the slogan and everything. Now, of course, I support defunding the police in terms of reallocating their funds to social stuff to help, do stuff that cops should not be doing, stuff like that. But as I point out, defund the police means different things to different people. Like when we use defund the police, we mean pre-prioritize the money to other things. To a lot of people, defund the police literally means abolish police, like have no police at all. And I actually even showed him a video of the Minneapolis mayor, I believe, right after the George Floyd protest started happening. He was at Kyle covered it too, if you might remember that. A video where he was at a protest and they asked him would he support defund the police, and he does not because he doesn't want to like abolish the police. He supports police reform and all that. The woman up there, she pretty much said, and I showed it to Harry too, when they say defund the police, she said we want no police, period. Like that's what they mean by when they say defund the police. They want to abolish it completely, no police whatsoever. So when you say shit like that, the majority of Americans don't support that. They don't support defunding the police, or actually abolishing the police. But when it comes to defunding the police itself, the slogan, it was like, I showed this to Harry, it was like 18% approval among Americans of actually defund the police movement. And then when it comes to the biggest supporters of defund the police, it was like blacks and Democrats. It was only between like 28 to 34% of blacks and Democrats support it. So even the biggest majority group that support defund the police, not even a third support it. The majority of blacks want, not only do blacks don't want defund the police, they want to increase funding to the police. Like the majority of Americans want that. They want the exact opposite of what we're pushing. So now when it comes to defund the police, its policy itself, it's fluctuated, but like at its peak, like in August of 2020, it was like only 47% of Americans supported actually defunding the police and reprioritizing it to like 53%. Now it's like 46 or something like that against it. So even the majority of Americans are against defunding the police. But there is one thing that the vast majority of Americans, even Republicans, support. Police reform. And depending on the issue, of course, the policies weigh on popularity, depending on what it is. But the term like itself, police reform, I actually looked it up when I talked to him about it. Guess what it polled at?
What?
Over 90% support.
Whoa!
So 90% of Americans want to have police reform, whereas only 18% of them support defunding the police. Now, me and him had a discussion about this. Like, he would run if he ran from office. He would run on defund the police, period. I would not run on that. I would run on police reform, which would include defunding the police. But I'm more likely to get that done by putting into police reform and talking about that instead of just saying defund the police, because it's a political suicide pill, basically. As we've seen in a whole bunch of other places where people have lost because they ran on it. And he goes, but Cory Bush and Jamal Bowman run on it, so they won. Okay, yeah, but they're anecdotal compared to other things. And also, they probably won because of other things. Like, there are a lot of people that didn't want Biden to be president, but they voted for him because they hated Trump more. So they, like, ignored them supporting defund the police, probably, because they support him all the other things. Yeah. Like, so, when I explain this to you, if both things, for police reform or defund the police, if both of them are going to lead to the exact same thing, including defund the police, but one has an 18% approval, the other one has up to 90% approval, what do you think strategy would work better, mine or his?
Yours.
Okay, and why do you think that?
Because of the polls.
Yeah, exactly. It's more likely to appeal to people. Like, a lot of leftists don't realize that you are just turning off the people. That's why I mentioned too about like Bernie and AOC. Like, I think we even did a video on this about if Bernie should run again. I think Bernie should run again until he either becomes president or he dies. Why? Because he has the best chance of any progressive to become president. Because if he's gone, who else? Who else can replace him? Do you know of anyone? I don't. Like the one person that everyone brings up is AOC. The problem is that I don't think AOC would do well in a presidential run, because although she agrees with Bernie on the policy, she alienates people that we need to get. Like, we are going to need to get some conservative voters to vote for us. They aren't turned off to Bernie like they are to AOC. Like, I remember seeing polls like in the Midwest where AOC would need to win in order to become president. She's like on par with Pelosi in terms of hatred, like 25% or something like that. Whereas Bernie is nowhere near that. Why? Because they agree with the same things? Well, I'm sure there might be some sort of racial and sexual issues that they just don't like a minority women, but I doubt it's the main reason. It's more of... What?
That's probably what it would be.
But I'm pretty sure a big chunk of it is because Bernie, although he agrees with like AOC on the social issues, he's not woke about it. He doesn't rub it in people's face like she does. And he doesn't focus on it like she does. He focuses on the economic issues while still supporting the social issues, which doesn't alienate people. She does. That's why I think if she ran for president, she would have a much harder time than Bernie would. Like, you guys got to appeal to the majority of Americans who find you guys stupid and silly. Like me, for example. I'm a progressive, but I'm a big monster truck fan. And you know what's big in the monster truck community?
Trump.
No. Oh, yeah. Conservatives. The majority of monster trucks are right-wing. I'm the minority of monster truck fans in America. But, I have a lot of Trumpsters watch me and all are conservatives. But you know what? They still watch me. And hell, they even watch this show too. Why? Because I don't turn them off like you do. Like, a lot of times, they'll go like, and oh my god, I've seen it so many times with, anyone supports Trump, they're just a bunch of racists and sexists and all these isms, stuff like that. That's not always the case. It's an individual basis. Since I'm nice to these people and still talk to them about other things, they somewhat respect me more than you guys do. They're willing to listen to me. And hell, I've even gotten some of them to change their minds on being a progressive, or at least be like more libertarianish and not be like pro-Trump as much. I've successfully done that to people because I don't alienate them like you guys do. This is so when it comes to like police reform, like in Minneapolis, just support police reform. Run on that. You can even add defund the police on there. You can do it and be more successful, which has done it happen in so many other counties where they've done police reform. It's very easy to do, but you gotta try and fight for it. And then there was another thing. Oh, like CRT, for example. You could talk about... I've mentioned it before. We talked about it a couple times before. I don't have a problem with talking about CRT, but the problem is that it's such like a toxic word like defund the police that we really should probably just drop it. Now, of course, the conservatives are incorrect to say it's being taught in schools. It's not. But it's like so toxic that it's just not palatable. When we could talk about systemic racism, which we already do in school, and works just as fine. Like, God, what was I gonna say? Like, we even covered a thing a few months ago or whatever, where Vosh covered a school that actually taught CRT as in, yeah, fuck white people, basically. Not only is that wrong and racist, but it fuels the ammo for conservatives to be against it even more. Whereas systemic racism just doesn't. Like the drug war, if you talk about that, you're going to get conservatives to agree with you on that. But if you talk about CRT, they're not. Because it's too much of a poisonous word to them. So why can't you just drop these stupid words and just focus on things and terms that actually work when they do the exact same thing? I don't fucking get it. Like Kyle says, it's just about, they just want to be edgy at this point. Like I remember Vosh lately has been talking to a lot of idiots on the Native American front, like about getting their stolen land back, where a lot of them actually, not Native Americans, but like dumb leftists online advocate like kicking all like white people out of America and giving all the land back to the Native Americans that we stole from and stupid like that. You can't do that. And not only that is that would not work, and it's racist, it's not appealing. And also not even the majority of Native Americans even want that. You fucking idiots. Like, you guys are just extreme and alienating to people, and you need to just stop. Just focus on terms that can get people to vote for you. Oh my god. And then, of course, when we talk about CRT, let's get to the video, too, of someone that Kyle covered who talked about CRT, and they didn't even know what CRT even is. Like, it's easy to destroy these guys, but you don't even need to bring up the argument. Because they're clowns, and they're not going to beat you in other ways, so focus on other things.
Spoke to some officials in Florida who are currently on a crusade against CRT, which stands for Critical Race Theory. I point that out for the people in the audience who are normal and not terminally online, who might not know what CRT means.
Yeah, and that's another thing, too. A lot of people don't even know what that means, so when you say it, you look silly to them, just like intersectionality.
So anyway, without further ado, let me show you a Florida official
with doorknobs.
He's against and what he wants to fix. Take a look.
What did you see in those two books that you looked at? What did you object to?
Critical race theory. What critical race theory boils down to is teaching kids to hate their friends, teaching them to focus on race.
It doesn't.
Rather than focus on character.
So let's look at some of these examples from the K through 5 books that you were objecting to the other day.
What I did was go through the teacher's manuals that are used to teach these books. And what you find is that it builds the foundation for critical race theory, not on the 3 words of critical race theory, but it builds the foundation on culturally responsive training, equity versus equality, social justice. So those are all innocuous terms in many people's minds, but when you look at how the left is now using those to drive the whole perspective of critical race theory.
What is the sentence in here?
I'm not sure there is one.
There isn't.
The terms, see, that's where most...
No, I don't mean the terms. I mean the concepts. What in the book, conceptually, do you object to that teachers will read this off?
Culturally responsive training is a whole notion in the book. Equity versus equality is a whole notion.
But that's in the book that the kids will read.
No, that's in the book the teachers are using as a guide to teach the kids.
Do you have the section where it says...
I think you're a little too senile to understand what you're even saying, because I have no idea what you're talking about, buddy.
Neither do I.
I don't recall. Equity, culturally responsive training is clearly identified.
What is culturally responsive training? What does that mean?
Culturally responsive training is a fancy term for multiculturalism, dividing people by ethnicity.
Where is this from?
This is from the homework our team did.
So that's your language, not the language of the textbook.
It's language we found in the literature. I don't know what you're looking for, Mike.
I don't see anything in here that says that they're teaching critical race theory.
This is all very subtle. We've said that from the beginning.
Oh my
critical
God.
race theory is a very subtle ideology that permeates.
I have literally no idea what he was trying to say. Do you? I have no idea.
Neither do I.
That was like... That was...
Okay. I think... CRT is teachers teaching that everything is about race and infecting our culture with it. I think that's what I got from it.
That guy sounded like Dementia Joe level stupid.
No. That'd be Biden before Biden when he's like full blown brain dead.
I actually
and
even
not
got
just like early stages of dementia. When he's in the person who got so bad that they can't even remember their own name.
I even got critical race theory loaded up on my phone to talk about it on Wikipedia, but I think Kyle's going to talk about it, so I'll hold my tongue before mentioning it.
Listen, man, you want to make an intelligent case against critical race theory? I'm listening. I love debating all sorts of ideas. TJ Kirk and I had a phenomenal conversation on nihilism the other day and what that entails. I'm open to these discussions. I'm open to these debates. I don't think nothing else sacred. There's nothing off limits. Let's have a conversation about all this shit. But let's keep it real. Most of the people who are crusading against critical race theory have no fucking idea what critical race theory is.
It's just a conservative buzzword.
If you follow this stuff.
Yeah.
Look,
It
flipping out over it was the big, culture war scandal on the right.
You see buzzword.
And I was like, damn, well, I gotta look into this. What's going on here? First thing I learned. They don't even teach critical race theory in elementary school, in middle school, or in high school. So www.whythefuckwetalkingaboutthis.org. What are you doing? Why are we talking about this? Okay, let me give you guys. I went to the always trusty Wikipedia.
Here you go.
And
this is what I looked up too, so let me slow it down so you can all read what Kyle says. This is exactly what it says on Wikipedia. On pause.
let me just give you the first portion here. Here's the first thing they say about critical race theory. This is fascinating. They say critical race theory is a framework of analysis and an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists who seek to examine the intersection of race and law in the United States and to challenge mainstream American liberal approaches to racial justice. CRT examines social, cultural, and legal issues primarily as they relate to race and racism in the U.S. A tenet of critical race theory is that racism and disparate racial outcomes are the result of complex, changing, and often subtle social and institutional dynamics rather than explicit and intentional prejudices of individuals.
So yeah, that's made perfect sense what CRT is. It's basically talking about systemic racism, because this is the thing that a lot of conservatives don't recognize. To them, racism is just being like explicitly like Gavin, like throwing out the N-word and stuff like that. That's explicit racism, but there's also implicit racism, where there's racism without actually observable racism that you can't just see. Like the drug war. Like that's a racist policy, but you don't know because even though Nixon and his administration actively promoted it to be racist, now it doesn't have that like racial angle to it anymore, even though it actively does hurt minorities more than whites. So that's a racist policy based upon systemic racism, even though it's not explicit.
As well.
What?
It's also got a classist aspect as well.
Yeah. It's like,
since you notice the when it comes to that, the black people don't go there. But if you watch it going on a class, it goes up for other races as well, including whites.
Yeah, like historical wealth in blacks in America. It's significantly lower than whites. Why? Because of the systemic racism they had to deal with. Be it slavery for like 250 years, then Jim Crow for like 100 years, and even today, with like historical redlining, which was a big thing all the way up into the 70s, so like 50 years ago, and that's a big indicator of wealth in a family is home ownership, and the drug war and all that stuff, free trade deals that outsource all the jobs, which affects the minority communities more because they don't have tenure. That's why black communities in America aren't doing well as whites.
That just said, that says, look, when we talk about racism, the problem is not that Bob in Mississippi is racist or politician X is racist or any individual is racist. That's not the problem. The problem is the system. The problem is the structures. So, for example, the drug war. Yes, the drug war on paper, well, there was a time it was explicitly along racial lines because they had tougher punishment for crack cocaine than regular cocaine, even though they give you the same high. Why? Because there was more black people who were using crack and more white people who used cocaine, so the punishment for crack was much harsher. But this is a great example So on paper now, there's no racialized language around the drug war. It says, yeah, if you do this drug, it's a crime. If you sell this drug, it's a crime. That's what the law is outlined like. But the way it's enforced is disproportionate in that it targets communities of color much more. Again, this isn't conjecture. This isn't opinion. This isn't from Kyle. This is a fact. We've seen the numbers. We've gone over the numbers. For selling drugs, same thing. For another great example in the criminal justice system, the death penalty. If a black person and a white person commit the same crime, a black person is much more likely to get the death penalty than a white person. So in other words...
And that's a good example, too, because the death penalty isn't explicitly of racist policy, but it overwhelmingly is used against minorities more, even though they commit the exact same crimes as whites do.
Again, the point is, the problem is not individual racists. You can shame somebody and wag your finger, oh, that's racist, all day long. That accomplishes Dickie McGee's acts. What they're saying is, it's the system that matters. Fix the system. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I talk to right-wingers, and I make the point I just made, they're actually happy when you say the problem isn't individual people being racist. They're like, right, yeah, damn right, you're right about that. The problem is the system and the structures. Yeah, we could shake.
Just like me when I talk to, like, right-wingers online, like in the monster community, they're more willing to listen to me if I talk about systemic racism. But if I bring up CRT, though, they're not, because that's automatically a buzzword to them and they don't want any association with it. That's why I say earlier, you gotta pick your terms correctly.
Change that, make the system more fair and just. That is the very first thing it says about critical race theory on the Wikipedia page. And the right flips out over critical race theory as if the point of critical race theory is to call individuals racist all day long. When that is explicitly not the point of critical race theory. Now, by the way, again, I don't even know why we're talking about this. It's not in elementary school, it's not in middle school, it's not in high school. Critical race theory is a graduate level course. So, what happened? Well, the right found their culture war issue of the day, and they went all in on it, and they defined the terms of the debate, and they hammered, and they hammered, and they hammered, and they hammered, and they got people, fake moral panic going on. That's what happened. And again, this is what the right does so well. They changed the conversation to culture war bullshit. Something with Dr. Seuss, or Big Bird said get vaccinated, or Mr. Potato Head is now just Potato Head. I'm so fucking outraged by that. Oh my god, there's now a diverse character in a superhero movie. Who gives a fuck? I don't care. I don't care about any of it. I care about a $15 minimum wage. I care about unionization. I care about getting people health care. I care about ending the wars and stopping drone bombing babies in Afghanistan. That's what I care about. That's what I care about. Now, the problem with the left is they go follow the right down the rabbit hole and talk about the culture war bullshit. But look,
like a lot of leftists
do. You saw this is a guy who's leading a crusade in Florida against critical race theory. He can't define critical race theory. He doesn't know the first thing about critical race theory. He's not even saying the...
No conservative knows what CRT means because they're stupid.
The problem is the textbooks. He's saying the problem is the thing that the teachers read that they then use to talk to the children. And then when he's asked to cite something, he doesn't even have that material. He cites the thing that was the summary of the people in his office. I don't care about what the people in your office think. That's all opinion. That's all spin. I care about what does it actually say? So listen, in conclusion, we actually do have a really deep problem in the education system in the U.S. And it's sort of the opposite of what this guy's talking about. The biggest problem I see is the uber-patriotism fake bullshit. They have textbooks in Mississippi and Texas where they put this incredible spin on history where they pretend like the U.S. is the world's beacon of freedom, and we're the one indispensable nation, and we're the world's sole superpower, we're the world police, and American exceptionalism is true, and let me give you a totally whitewashed history of the U.S. as to how great we are. That's bullshit. Now, are there great things about the U.S.? Yes, I love the Constitution, I love the First Amendment, I love freedom of speech, I love the New Deal. There's a lot of things you can talk about. The Civil Rights Movement, wonderful. There's a lot of great parts of American history. You know what else there is? A lot of disastrous parts. There's the genocide of Native Americans, there's slavery, there's segregation, there's intense corruption, there's imperialism. So the real thing you should be teaching is, it should be academic freedom, but everything should be an accurate perspective. It should be teach the good, teach the bad, give people all the information. This is really
but conservatives don't like that.
How to think.
Of course they don't. They don't like thinking.
Cynical. How to be skeptical and not be naive.
Facts care about our feelings.
You're saying
override facts.
You're saying Benny Boy's right when it's feelings over facts?
Yeah. Give people all the information, all the facts. Look, it's not like the left is blameless. The 1619 Project has a number of factual inaccuracies. And so, is there a segment of the left that does want to teach, like,
Yeah, I remember that too, 1619 Project. There was part of it, they redacted it somewhat. There was one part of the 1619 Project that said that the American Revolution was only about slavery. That's it. Nothing about no representation in the British Parliament or anything like that. Now, thankfully, they redacted to some of it. I mean, some of it was about slavery, which I doubt that was fully the case much either. But yeah, the 1619 Project is not really that good. And the fact that leftists, even Bosch, defended a lot is pretty bad.
Have to be anti-racist, and they act like the idea of colorblindness is racist. No, it's not racist. It's what MLK was preaching, and we should try to implement that. At our best, we...
Not only that, just recently, I remember seeing on Twitter and stuff, I think some schools in the South are actually trying to remove MLK completely from their textbooks now.
Mm-hmm.
Would be colorblind. We would not see colorblind.
In the Holocaust.
That's all I too. There are some on the left who want to teach an overly negative history. They want to act like you can only look at it through a racial lens, and maybe they harp way too much on those issues. That's a problem. Much bigger problem is that on the right, it's overly patriotic, nationalistic, complete horseshit that whitewashes all the crimes.
Like the 1776 Project, too.
Which is not true. That's exactly what all these people who are crusading against critical race theory, that's what they want in the education system. They want shit like Reagan was the best president ever. They want shit like, well, it's not really, let's dedicate a quarter of a page to the whole Native American genocide thing. And go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
They still teach the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as if it was just factually the correct thing to do. Wrong. If you're familiar with the specifics of that,
which I am too,
it's questionable at best, and I'm putting it very kindly by saying that. So we have a problem in this country. The education system is broken, just not necessarily in the way that they think it is. So you guys know my take on it. I would love the labor history in the U.S. to be taught in detail alongside the civil rights movement. I'd love to know the good and the bad, but all this yelping over critical race theory or whatever, it's just a culture war scandal du jour, and they don't know the first fucking thing about it, and that's obvious. So don't fall for this grift, don't fall for this stupidity. These people are clowns. They may as well put the fucking clown hat on, seriously, and the nose. The big red nose, honk honk. So, there you have it. Pretty stunning. Pretty stunning. Can't say the first thing about what he objects to or the details of critical race theory. All he has is that manufactured right-wing outrage, which Fox News and Newsmax, One American News Network, and Republican politicians, they're great at ginning up that anger. But really, they're changing the conversation from the real source of misery in this country, which is nobody has any hope. Nobody has any hope because the system's so incredibly broken, and people don't have a fair shot anymore. So there you have it.
This actually got me thinking of a very good counter-argument video. Have you ever heard that channel, Counter-Argument?
No.
It's whoever did that channel did a very good video about, like, systemic racism or stuff like that, talking about, like, privilege. It's really good. Maybe we should talk about that if I find the next episode. That would be really cool. But yeah, I have a lot of things to say about this. Well, it boils down to conservatives. CRT is not the boogeyman that you think it is. But at the same time, to my fellow lefties, let's not try and push it so we don't piss off the right as much, so they don't use it as a wedge issue to help get them in office, because you can't make good arguments to counter it. But they're still wrong at it. And also, we need to just teach the facts about America. No political spin or bias on it. There are a lot of things in America that was just bad, and it needs to be covered regardless if conservatives cry about it and don't like it. Simple as that.
Yeah.
Alright, so now let's get on to the final topic. Progressives caving and looking stupid. So of course we talked about this a few months ago about the I can never pronounce it, reconciliation bill being linked with infrastructure bill. At the time we covered it, the progressives actually held up the vote to try and show that we mean business and we're not going to cave and you're going to give us what we want. Fuck Mansion Cinema and all that. And it was like a $3 trillion. And unfortunately, since they fucking caved. It went all the way down from like 3 trillion all the way down to like 1.75 trillion. They took out almost everything, and they shrunk the length of how it's good for, and I think means tested too, which limits the amount of money and stuff that people need to get in all that crap. And of course the progressives, well, some of them, a good chunk of them, voted for it, even though they said before they weren't going to do it.
And we'll give a bit of credit. The squad voted against it.
Yeah, some of them voted against it like you should have, because you have to kill it until it's back up to the 3 trillion like it was supposed to be.
Exactly. But, for example, Ro Khanna voted for it, should be fucking primary.
Yeah, and Jayapal too, and all the other.
Jayapal should be primary as well.
So get to work on that, Mayumi.
Yes.
And they need to block. I mean, they need to vote against it and kill it unless we get all we want, and then put the pressure right back on Cinema and Mansion, because they're the ones holding us up. It's not the progressives, especially when they faced so much pressure. Even the fucking View and a whole bunch of other MSN shows are actually shitting on Mansion Cinema even more than we last covered it too. Like, you need to keep the pressure on them. And unfortunately, what makes it even worse, despite the fact that they voted for this terrible bill, is that Mansion has pretty much admitted that he still might vote against it still anyway, even though he got what he wanted.
He wants zero. That's because he wants a $0 reconciliation bill. He doesn't want a reconciliation bill.
So
he wants to get rid of it.
Yeah, so you guys...
He wants also a $0 infrastructure bill as well.
Yeah, you guys...
He doesn't want to do anything because he's a Republican.
Yeah, so here's Mike's video on it showing you how stupid you all look.
Well, in the least surprising news ever, Joe Manchin is already signaling that he will not support the Build Back Better Act, less
even though he got everything he wanted, believe it or not.
than a week after the Progressive Caucus caved and decided to vote for the so-called bipartisan infrastructure proposal. So in an article for Newsweek, John Jackson writes, Manchin signals hesitation to passing Biden's social agenda with inflation getting worse. Now, he doesn't explicitly say that he's not going to vote for this because of inflation, but really what he's doing is laying the groundwork for his inevitable no vote on Build Back Better. He tweeted out, by all accounts, the threat posed by record inflation to the American people is not transitory and is instead getting worse, from the grocery store to the gas pump.
That's because of supplies, you idiot.
Americans know the inflation tax is real.
You blame COVID for that. There's less supply.
Interesting thing, 13 Republicans voted for it.
Yeah, but here's the thing about inflation. The inflation's going up is because there's limited supply. So because that, the demand, the price goes up. That's how it goes in the markets. When there's less of demand, when there's more demand and low supply, the price goes up. When there's more demand, when there's more supply but less demand, the price goes down. That's why prices are going up, because there's less of a supply and there's still that high demand.
And DC can no longer ignore the economic pain Americans feel every day. So he doesn't cite Build Back Better, but of course his excuse when he votes no will be, I couldn't support any new spending during this time when we see inflation like this. Now, John Jackson kind of reads between the lines to deduce what I think is pretty logical, that this is him kind of telling everyone, I'm a Nova. Shocker. Manchin doesn't specifically cite Biden's plan in his brief Twitter post, but earlier this month he spoke about his hesitation regarding the potential impact the spending package could have on the economy. Throughout the last 3 months, I have been straightforward about my concerns that I will not support a reconciliation package that expands social programs and irresponsibly adds to our nearly $29 trillion in national debt that no one else seems to care about, nor will I support a package that risks hurting American families suffering from historic inflation, Manchin said during a November 1st press conference. Simply put, I will not support a bill that is this consequential without thoroughly understanding the impact it will have on our national debt, our economy, and the American people, Manchin added. And let's get one thing straight. He doesn't actually care about inflation. He doesn't actually care about whether or not the American people are suffering. If he did, he would support policies to improve their lives.
He wants a $0 infrastructure bill. He wants America's infrastructure to be an F- because he's a Republican.
But this is about him appeasing his corporate donors. And one Republican billionaire donor is actually holding a fundraiser for him very soon, perhaps to thank
Look at that!
He's a Republican with a D next to his name.
Look at that, Democrats! And all you idiot liberals. Manchin, just like that idiot mayor in Buffalo taking money from Republicans. This is why he needs to just go flat out, period.
Him for tanking his own party's agenda. So,
you know what? I'd actually prefer if Manchin actually said, you know what, I'm now a Republican.
It's not shocking.
At least be honest.
Knowing the way that Joe Manchin is, knowing how dishonest he is, and that he would pull out whatever excuse to vote against this, now I have to ask myself, do progressives in the House regret voting for the so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill before
you look like clouds,
knowing that this was not just a possibility, but a likelihood? Remember, the reason why Ro Khanna decided to support this in an interview with Jet Uger, he explained that, he believed that there was this implicit agreement between him and the president, and that Manchin ultimately would be a yes vote on Build Back Better.
I think publicly Manchin doesn't want to.
And this was actually the video that I had another video about this that Kyle was going to cover, so I guess we're going to see it right here pretty much too.
Make those commitments, but our belief is that the president has a private commitment from 50 senators that he can pass.
David Ro should be primaried.
Yes, he should.
He didn't come to us for many, many months, and he only came to the presses once he had the commitment. I personally believe that he will pass the Build Back Better agenda, and Manchin ultimately will
and
be.
You're a clown now, Ro. For clown out. You're a clown now. Just like Ajay Paul. You're both clowns. You don't ever believe fucking Manchin on anything. Dude, how dumb are you?
Less than a week after...
God, a lot of you progressives are so fucking stupid and weak.
They passed the so-called bipartisan infrastructure deal.
And also, to Vosh and other idiots, this is where you're wrong. You have to criticize him on this shit because this is unacceptable.
Already signaling that he's not going to support what...
This is considering the other votes Ro has done and Ro has voted yes for, this is it. He should be fucking primary him.
Yeah,
he should be kicked. He's out. He's a careerist grifter.
Yeah, he needs, and all the progressives, if you vote against the right things, you need to face some sort of pressure. And if you need to be primaried, yeah, deal with it.
Wanted him to vote for. Because why would he? He got his corporate handout in the form of the bipartisan infrastructure, aka toll road bill. So he has zero incentive to support this, especially when his corporate donors are in his ear saying, don't support this. Now, Pramila Jayapal, she got assurances from people in the House who are conservative as well, right-wing Democrats aligned with the Manchins and the cinemas of the world, and she thought it was necessary to vote for the infrastructure bill because they looked her in the eye. I wish I were kidding about this, but this is actually something that she said.
And every single one of those individuals looked us in the eye and said they were voting for it.
Primary.
Yeah, so what's to stop them from also suddenly having a change of heart because of inflation?
Honk honk, you're a clown, Jayapal, clowning around.
Concerns. I mean, this is why they should have never caved. Now, in an interview with Rachel Maddow, Pramila Jayapal still is indicating that she believes that progressives won somehow, and she is very, very adamant.
Idiot.
Man, she's really, she's like desperately delusional. Man, she really is not thinking straight if she actually thinks that.
If she thinks that, she's got to go.
Oh my God.
Row have got to go.
How do you...
They're not trustworthy at all.
You can't...
They shouldn't be part of it. They shouldn't be part of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a vote on Build Back Better next week. We'll see about that because they're waiting on an economic impact analysis to be conducted, and it doesn't seem as if it's going to be finished by then, and even if it is finished by then. I mean, even Rachel Maddow kind of seemed as if she was skeptical that they wouldn't just come up with an excuse as to why they wouldn't support it. It's really sad to see things play out the way that I expected it to play out. But again, if you are even somewhat savvy, you know that this is what Joe Manchin was going to do when progressives got rolled. The bad thing, however, is that Joe Biden is probably going to sign the so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill into law on Monday.
Unless
if that happens,
unless Manchin doesn't vote for it.
That's it. Joe Manchin is probably not going to be a yes vote on Build Back Better.
They want a $0. They want a $0 reconciliation bill and a $0 infrastructure bill.
It means that we're net worse off because of that bipartisan infrastructure bill when it comes to climate change. See, if you don't pass both of them simultaneously, then overall we're doing more harm than good. And that's really sad. And I would like to think that maybe this is going to be some sort of a learning experience for progressives, but odds are they're still going to be weak. Odds are they're still going to cave in future negotiations. Hence why Democratic Party leadership is never going to take any of their threats.
Yep, that's why you must hold the line at all costs and show them like you mean business, like you did earlier, for God's sake. That was like your good moment right there. You should have stayed with that.
Seriously, because they're not serious and they will cave.
Oh my God. So yeah, what do you guys see about that?
Hashtag primary Rokana, hashtag primary, who was it? Primary Jayapal, and anyone else who voted for this infrastructure, for this fake reconciliation bill. They can all go. They all need to go.
So it appears like the left yet again got rolled, got duped, and
they did.
the Progressive Caucus are so pathetic. They went right along with doing the thing they said they would do. Namely, in the House, the two bills did pass together. You got vague commitments that one, the Build Back Better will pass by November 15th, and we're waiting on the CBO score to determine it. As if the CBO score matters. Guys, the bipartisan infrastructure deal add to the deficit. Nobody said, oh, that's a non-starter for that, but it would be a non-starter for Build Back Better. What a joke! if you want their commitment, they can just vote yes on the bill right now. No, it's on November 15th, maybe see what happened was the sun was demise. Me and Craig and them was down by the Safeway anyway. New phone it is. You guys are pathetic. So anyway, the left did a terrible job. Terrible job here. They got rolled. They voted for the bipartisan infrastructure deal, did vote, get the Build Back Better deal to the House. Never mind what the hell's going to go on in the Senate. So as these negotiations were ongoing, Jake Uger had Congressman Ro Khanna on Young Turks. And man, he does an amazing job here holding his feet to the fire. Take a look at this.
But you gotta look. Let's just do one thing at a time. You guys said that you would not vote in the House until the Senate passed Build Back Better. You're now saying no. We withdraw our position. You have to say that's true because it is true, right?
Well, there was a disagreement. There were different opinions. Certainly, our chair, Representative Hall, said initially, I don't know how she framed it, that we want some ironclad.
I can read a New York Times quote for you. Progressive Democrats will warn the House leadership that a majority of their members will withhold their support for $1 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill until the Senate passes a second, far larger package containing their spending priorities. That's a fact. So.
Yeah, the challenge is that we really were to hold to that. We did nothing. I mean, you really would, the president's agenda would not happen, and we move on.
No, but hold on, President Khan, that's of course not true, right? So you wouldn't have it yet. Hold on, you wouldn't have it yet. And then what would happen next is pressure would then go back to Manchin and Sinema, and they would say, well, the progressives are holding the line, and they're doing the same exact thing that Manchin and Sinema are doing. Manchin and Sinema are drawing red lines all over you guys.
So, look, all personal stuff aside, I know TYT and Jank, they're not too happy with me. They're not big fans of the consequence at the moment. I get it. Neither is Jimmy Dore. I get it. But got to call balls and strikes, and the fact of the matter is, Jake's 100% right, and I think Ro Khanna's wrong. They don't even view fighting in a real way as an option. They don't even view it as an option because it violates civility and authority. Now,
they're idiots because they're dumbasses. They're weak. They have no ability to do anything.
They're fucking spineless pussies.
I have a slight disagreement with Shank is that really is the last ditch effort. Is to go nuclear publicly, and just immediately portray the public enemy number one, basically sick the dogs of the voting base on them. Make them like America's most wanted, if you will. Put all the blame squarely on them. That is a last-ditch effort. But the thing that could have happened, and should have happened, before it ever got to that, is Joe Biden, if he actually cared about the specifics of this bill, which he does not. As I told you guys a million times, he would have called Sinema and Manchin into his office, and he would have done the old mafia boss move. I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. It's going to be characteristic approach. It's going to be, listen, you can be my best friend if you want to be my best friend. Kirsten Sinema, do you want to be in my administration? Do you have somebody in your family who wants to be in my administration? Do you have somebody close to you who wants to be in my
Although,
administration?
Kyle, that might be a little bit too nepotism.
No, that's too far. No. You'll get fucking impeached.
Yeah.
Infrastructure in Arizona. Do you want some federal building named after you? I'll give you whatever you want if you vote for the $3.5 trillion bill as it is. Now, if you don't do it, well, you raised nearly $1 million for Big Pharma, and you're doing their bidding. So, maybe, just maybe, we go on a public crusade against you and call that fact out, and call out all your donors specifically, and we primary you with somebody from the left, and they have full institutional backing from the Democratic Party. And,
I would say primary in regards even if they did vote for it.
The DOJ and Merrick Garland take a look at that. And maybe there's some charges that can be brought against you. Now, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that that's going to happen. I'm just saying.
This is about Sinema, though.
She should probably do the right thing. Or maybe something like that might happen. You know what I'm saying? Joe Manchin, same thing. He's an even clearer example. How many times have I told you guys? His family is a crime family. His daughter is caught dead to rights on email talking about how do we come up with rationalizations to jack prices for the EpiPens. Just completely rationalizing price gouging for Big Pharma. Caught. Red-handed. You're telling me Joe Biden couldn't make Joe Manchin an offer he can't refuse based on those facts? And again, all this stuff went behind the scenes. You talk to Joe and say, listen, I like you. You're a nice guy. You're a good guy. I'm old. Apparently Biden calls him JoJo. Cringeworthy, but, zombie Biden has like, hey, JoJo, I got a deal for you, buddy. Wait, where am I? Anyway, here's the thing I want to do for you. Listen, Jack, JoJo, what we're going to do is, I'll build another military base for you in West Virginia. I'll give you money for infrastructure project in West Virginia. Do you want to be in my administration? Somebody in your family want to be in my administration? I'm going to hook you up. I want to hook you up, but I need your vote. And I don't get your vote. Well, there's quite a bit of dirt on your family. There's quite a bit of dirt on your daughter. It's honestly, if I'm being honest,
that's a bit too far.
Yeah.
That's a bit too far. That would get you impeached.
Yeah, you still got to go after them regardless if they vote for it or not. You can't let them go away because they vote for it. That's letting them get away with criminal activity, Kyle. We keep telling you that for months now.
You should be. Honestly,
okay. At least wait until they're out already, and then you go after their families.
How much money? $5 million for Joe Manchin's dirty empire with the title of the article here. Go read that article. Details all the ways in which Joe Manchin makes money from the fossil fuel industry. Look, man, you're a criminal. You're corrupt. You were bribed. We have you caught. Your daughter's a criminal. Now, I don't have to look into that. I don't want Merrick Garland to have to look into that.
Kyle, you need to look into it regardless if they vote for it or not.
So, but if I get your vote, you can just be my best friend. It's on you. Talk to you soon. If you did that,
Please, Biden, don't listen to Kyle on that one.
It's very likely Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema say, okay, you got it. And you know what? Maybe they don't. But you know what they might say? I can't do 3.5 trillion, I can do 3 trillion. I can't do 3.5 trillion, I can do 2.8 trillion. You could have gotten that done, but you have to care, you have to want it, you have to be willing to act like FDR or LBJ are on Twitch to the President of the United States. Now, if that fails, then Jake is right. You want to leash the dogs. The one thing that these people care about, above and beyond everything, is their reputation. My reputation here.
I don't know about that one. I doubt Sinema cares about her reputation. See how she's acted the last few months.
I think Cinema's planning to bail soon.
That's what they care
I
about.
think Cinema's planning to bail.
Yeah, if you, as President of the United States, wage a bully pulpit campaign against 2 already unpopular senators, that has consequences. Remember when Trump would get, some Republican would say something against Trump, and Trump would go on a crusade and want their head on a platter, and he would go in on Twitter, and then overnight everybody on the Republican side would be like, we hate this person. This isn't a Republican, this is a rhino. Trump is right and you're wrong. And at the time, Biden had a high approval rate too. He could have used that to his advantage. He could have leveraged that. And you go on this public crusade against them, make them public enemy number 1, make them America's most wanted, and yeah, again, they're only human. They're only human. Tell them, come out and explain it. Go ahead. Hey, Joe Manchin, why are you against 80% of the people in your own state? Look at the provisions of Build Back Better. Look at how popular they are. You need to go explain to people in your own state why you're against their interests. Don't give me this hokey, West Virginia Democrat. No, because if you were, you'd be in favor of the bill. You're not a West Virginia Democrat. You're a corrupt Democrat. You're a corporatist. You're representing industry over the people. Even more Republicans support a lot of Build Back Better provisions than don't. So there is no way around that. Wage a campaign in public. Literally call them Republicans. Say, hey, you know what? You're in the wrong party. Go join the other party. We don't want you in this party. You're the problem. You're blocking the agenda of the American people because you're bought by industry. Yeah, I'm the president, and I just said that in an address to the nation at 8 o'clock on Thursday night. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I dare you. Prove me wrong. Vote for the bill. Prove me wrong. Vote for the bill. Make me eat my words. Vote for the bill. But they didn't do any of this. And they didn't do any of this because Biden doesn't really care about the specifics. And he's an old school backslapping politician. He's not FDR. He's not LBJ. He's not even JFK. And progressively over time, what do we get? From Bill Clinton onwards, you got these Democrats that are half Republican. That's what it is. And so there are consequences to that. Now, this is a great example of holding a congressman accountable. Because if you're not willing to use that tool, if you're not willing to go to that extent, then you have nothing. You have nothing. The only piece of leverage that the left created for themselves was we're going to keep these 2 bills linked together. Rokan ultimately saying, yeah, we're going back on that. Okay, so now you have 0 leverage at all. Period. Nothing. Now you're relying on the goodwill of somebody like Joe Biden.
Now you can push through a $0 infrastructure bill and a $0 reconciliation bill.
Some assholes bought my farm in the house.
Blame you for it.
They vote for this by November 15th. They're committed. You know how you can commit to getting a bill passed? Vote for it right now. And they could have done that, and they didn't do that because they don't want to do that. So either nothing's going to pass, or they're going to vote down even more, and that thing will pass, and they'll be flipped back on the list, and they'll say, well, now you got to vote for this one too. Now you have to sign off on a worse version of this.
Yeah, they'll reduce it down to $0.
And you had the corporate Democrats where you wanted them. But you gave away all the leverage, you squandered all the leverage, and you couldn't even extract executive orders from Biden. So you're going to get peanuts. If you show you're willing to accept peanuts, you're going to get peanuts. And that's what's happening with the left. Over and over and over and over and over and over. And the saddest thing is, guys, it wasn't that hard. All you needed was a coalition of like fewer than 10 more. Let's say you had 15 left congresspeople who are really left, who are actually left, and they know how to fight, and they're leaders. Then you could have tanked the bipartisan infrastructure deal. And you could have kept insisting, they go together, they don't go at all, we're not getting, we're not bluffing. Then you still have that leverage. But they don't, there's only 6 of them at best.
They need a leader that's willing to not compromise. Someone like me, but they don't have someone like that in there, sadly. Even Bernie, who's like the leader's like too weak to do that, sadly.
And even then, you don't know, ultimately, would they have voted for any watered down piece of shit if the bill went from 10 trillion to 6 trillion, 3.5 trillion to 2 trillion to 1.75 trillion, went all the way down to 900 billion? Would the left have fallen in line and voted for that too if they went together? Maybe, probably.
Yeah, and then, they'll do that, and then they'll send it from 900 billion to 0.
It's beyond pathetic because anybody who even believes in the right ideas lacks the basic strategy to win. And again, this is an example of somebody who just talks about politics and covers politics, trying to explain proper strategy to somebody who's in Congress. In a world that makes sense, it would be the other way around. It would be, the expert strategist would clearly be the congressperson, but there are no left people who do strategy and leadership correctly in Congress, and they've proven that time and time and time again.
Yep, so that was all the videos. So what do you guys say about this?
Ro Khanna, they've got to be proud. They've got anyone who supported this bill, who call themselves a progressive. You're not a progressive, and you should be primary.
Yeah, you can't just support this.
Bullshit.
Yeah, it's pretty pathetic. Alright, so we finally went through all the topics for this episode. God, this is a long one, over 2 hours. So see you guys hopefully soon for episode 31. See you guys next time.